digital transformation here.
Yeah.
I may add a little bit of this here that at the end of the day, this organizational culture or change of the legacy systems, it's good in terms of strategy, in tactical aspect. Sometimes we will touch what we call as human being there. Not only the digital aspect of it, the system of it, but the people. I think you also mentioned a little bit about possibility of resistance.
Yeah.
This kind of thing that we need to look after as well. I think in my previous life, whether here in Europe or in States and so on, or even in Maybank Indonesia, I look into that aspect as well. So we're not looking at just platform, the process, but also these people, because at the end of the day, they are the ones going to deal with it almost every day. So that kind of things, I think one of the aspects that we'll look into later. Moving on to the next step. We know that the prioritizing data is something that comes from the top management. Either coming through, again, strategy or something that we impose to us. But how to get this into realization of whether we can do it or not? And it needs some kind of persuasion and convincing some of the people that we need to convince, of course. How do you master clever use of resources to invest in this infrastructure? As you know, this infrastructure may not be cheap, of course. We require a little bit of money and investment. And how do you convince them? I'll start with Mel this time now.
Yeah. Well, as they always say, you will always hear infrastructure refresh or systems upgrade or systems update. Those are the keywords right now that is really happening, especially of the pandemic issue that we have. As they say before, the digital transformation process will take about 2 to 3 years, but they escalated it into 3 to 6 months because of the pandemic. So I mean, investing in your IT systems is really vital for to being successful in the rapidly changing market. So as your business grows, your needs and priorities will also change. So an increased number of your employees, technical advancements, and market pressures could put pressure on systems which may have been perfect when starting out, but are now starting to restrict the business and hamper operations, agility, and growth. So those are the things that you have to, identify the pros and cons and present it to the management and make sure that they fully understand what happened, what is happening, and what will happen in case there are a lot of scenarios that will come into the business. So you have to present them those kind of risk profile, as age systems are really more prone to failure. So because of these legacy systems, you might miss out some technology advances that can really deliver great values and returns versus those legacy assets. And of course, I would say that you have to present some business impact, the competitive advantage of having an upgraded system. You are investing in an infrastructure because definitely what they want is really an ROI. What they want is really what this brings to the market, what this brings to the business. So it's really important to note that technology and systems are the key differentiator and certainly an area which potential customers look at when choosing between companies, right? So you have to tell them the business agility of having a good system, a technology system. This is ability to respond to changing needs, business needs in ever complex world, which is key to success. Legacy systems versus the new systems. You are investing in infrastructure. What is the efficiency and productivity on it? Give them the numbers, give them the data, and of course, definitely we have to make sure that the security is also very vital in terms of having a good infrastructure. So I would say that management or stakeholders will really look into it. We have the money, but how are we going to invest it in infrastructure? So you need to get the right technology based on the business needs and the correct mindset. So those are the things that we have to see and identify and provide those kind of proposals or recommendations that will bring a competitive advantage, greater efficiency and productivity, and security. So I think that's the key for this, Sunny.
That's very good, very descriptive as well. Billy, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think just to add, right? I think we have to look into two aspects, right? One, from the the stakeholder or the management point of view, what are their needs, what are their goals to achieve the business goals, right? We work backwards on what are the infrastructure or system or tools that required to achieve that objective. So I think similar what Mel said. However, I think from on the internal team perspective, I think there has to be some kind of innovation or flexibility to try new technologies, right, or new techniques. Especially, the AI and ML techniques has been always growing year on year in terms of, their new way of doing things, perhaps, right? Having a new kind of propensity model or statistical model that we can try to be able to help the business objectives, right? Then I think we need to still explore and assess regularly on what can we sort of do a try and error or test and control mechanism kind of thing, right? Just to make sure that the team is also not so bored or doing BAU, right? Or we dictate them to actually use the same thing all over again, right? So I think that's the additional thing that I think I might add to your questions. Sorry.
That's great, Bill. That's great. Yes. I think it's also fair to say that before we embark into investing on new infrastructure, all this new technology, I guess it is also fair to say that where are we in the journey first? So that you know how long or how big this investment that you will be looking after. So yes, I agree with both of you that we need to identify the risk, the advantage, the business impact, and so on. I'd like to move into the more detail of this. Just once we've got the infrastructure, how can your analytics team can involve the sponsors on the journey with them? So not just for yourself, but also with them. We involve the sponsors. How do you do that? Mel?
We are on the data analytics space, so I would always tell them that let's provide them data and let the data speak for itself. So give them some stories of what happened, why did it happen, and what will happen if we just stay as is, or if we are going to to proceed with the idea of getting into this transformation journey. I don't think any management will stop any changes or initiatives into a data-driven organization if we provide them this data, which will be critical in decision making. Of course, we need to be agile. Management and sponsors can be impatient sometimes, or most of the time, if they cannot see any business impact or progress in the next couple of months. So I think a short-term to mid-term to long-term approach should be clear and measurable, and make sure that the sponsors or the stakeholders that we have are really within them. So keep them updated on the progress. So don't lose the momentum. It's one way of telling them that you are with me and I am with you, and let's go together on this journey.
Yes, fantastic. We in a few organizations that I've been into, I think one of the aspects in say that as reporting to the management, whether we have a steering committee team or a regular meeting with them, update and so on. I think that kind of conversation needs to be in place, I guess. Yeah. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I think the way that we have to position ourselves in the organizations, my thought is that we have to be becoming a business partners, right? I think without the business team, sometimes whatever that we analyze, whatever that we sort of wanted to try, it will not be happen, right? So I think we have to be a business partner for them, telling them the fact about their portfolio. We tell them that this might be opportunities for you to be able to grow your business or to retain your customers. And then you have to just follow the journey, right? And always challenge the team is that is this something that achieving the business, the business goal, or is this something just for your hobby, right? So sometimes that's the challenge that we have to always give to the team, and always ask whether this is something that is useful for the business or not. So about the technique and the methodology, I think it's us as a data analytic function well understand on what we need to do. The business wanted to see whether there's opportunity for them or not, and we can see it from data angle perspective, not from the experience perspective. Yeah.
That's of course, yeah. We need to look at it from the data perspective. Indeed, I agree with you totally. We have a question here from the audience, coming from David Flex of Big ID. This is we all mentioned about the journey here, and David wanted to know how regulation and compliance has affected the data acquisition and use for the analytics team. So basically asking about the impact of the regulation and compliance on the usage of the data and acquisition of the data as well. Open to you guys, whether you want to answer, Billy or Mel.
I can start. Yeah,
Okay.
Billy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah. As far as data governance is concerned, definitely what we want is to have an availability of data, accessibility of data, and make sure the accuracy of data is there. However, we need to work with the regulatory and compliance in terms of how are we going to make the sensitive, or the PII as we call, to not make it accessible to everyone. Though in FWD, what we implemented was data democratization, meaning to say everyone can access the data if you with certain level of governance. So meaning if you are on an analytics team, definitely you have an approval from the compliance team and from the system or data domain owners that you need to have an access to the data, but of course with a set of purpose, right? But the rest, after you have identified the PII from non-PII, so those PII data needs to be secured, and make sure only authorized users needs to have an access to that. So those are the things that we clearly provided guidelines as we provide access to our employees in our data lake or in our data warehouse, because definitely we are now what we want is a data-driven organization where everyone can access the data, but we always put a certain level of governance, because we need to secure and protect our data. And of course, those data that is being captured or collected from the customers should have a consent on it. I think for the banks also it will be the same.
Yes, that's great. I remember last year I was invited to speak on the similar event for the Philippines audience, banks and financial services there. And one of the discussions that we had then was about the regulations and how to deal with the challenges that you have in acquiring data, number one, and number two is how we're going to utilize it. Can we buy data? Can we sell data? Can we use it as much as we can? That kind of challenges is not just in Philippines, but also in Indonesia, I guess. We face similar issue. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I think the thing is that for us in Bank Mandiri, since we are a state-owned government bank, right? So it's always becoming a place where a regulator is always asked data from us, right? Fortunately, unfortunately, enterprise data maintenance become a single source of truth data where they always ask for data from us. But our challenges is always about definitions, right? Understanding about the questions of what they actually the regulator asks, because they don't always ask from to us, right? But also the request is always something is coming from the compliance, something coming from the business, right? And the challenge is that the regulators always compare, but it's not always wrong, right? If there is a difference or there is a dispute in the data, because one is asking with one definition, the other is always asking for different definition. So I think what we are sort of trying to apply in terms of process is that always reconcile between weekly data, ad hoc data, and also a monthly data, for example, right? I think what we try to do is that just to make sure that is this the same as it just has to be from weekly converted to monthly. Now, is this something that just an ad hoc for some other purposes, right? So I mean, we have to spend time at least a day or so just to understand all the requirements, all the criteria, all the definitions to be able to give the right data, right? Of course, governance, as what Mel said, accessing the data, we are applying a certain level of security or a certain level of access metrics to be able to have the flexibility, but at the same time, we secure the data just to make sure that PII is not accessible unless if it's really required, right? All those kind of stuff. So I think it's always been always been a challenge. At the same time, the good thing is that the bank has a single source of truth data in the same place, which is in enterprise data management, and we are sort of able to provide them with the right report.
Fantastic. Yes. At the end of the day, what the government or the regulators want to see is the system that applied within our organization, whether we are able to protect our one of the most important assets, that is the data from our customers. We need to convince that there are, or the systems are in place. Great. We talk about the journey, about data governance, how to utilize data, about the culture. And one more question about data analytics. How can data analytics, Mel already mentioned a little bit about that in the previous questions, help executives to sell their story? Because at the end of the day, this is about how to convince not only the stakeholders within the organization, but also outside the organization. That is our customers, the market, and so on. How does data analytics in your team help executives to sell the story? Start with you, Billy.
Okay, so I think the executive is always been our sponsor and really supporting us in terms of data analytics journey. The first of all, I think they always looking at us to really looking for data, right? But more than that is that how do we have the same understanding or aligning with their with the management vision or with the executive visions on going forward, right? We have a regular meeting with them to really give what we have been doing so far from all different aspects, from data all the way to analytics, right? On data governance side, how do we really having the right journey just to make sure that we have a trusted data, we have a complete data within our bank with the same quality and a good quality for sure. We have self-service business intelligence where we give the right information in a form of dashboard. And it's interactive, and is we applying in real time. Real time means, it's not always monthly, but there's a daily and also even twice a day kind of thing. So I think especially during the pandemic, right? We have a few around 60 dashboards that we are developing. We develop for them and to monitor the performance of the business, the financial aspect of the business, on liquidity management, risk management, as well as on the employee side, right? How do we monitor working from home, working from office ratio kind of things, and employees who got impacted to COVID, to get exposed to COVID, we also monitor that on a regular basis, in fact, twice a day. So I think so that's something that the executive can actually sell to the outside world. That we have the right information, we can analyze them, we can have we can make a decision faster through the information that we provided. On the advanced analytics, data scientist part, we also engage the business together as a partner to really doing try and error kind of things, right? We we found a pocket of opportunities within the portfolio, and how do we actually execute the opportunities to make sure that and then try on and test it and basically offer them the right products and the right offers to the customers, right? So I think that's something that the executive sort of can have 2-3 different stories to able to sell it to the outside world.
Great, fantastic. This has been a very, very good discussion and debate, I guess, from all of us. We learned so much from here, that data governance, the analytics, the regulators, and how we deal with management, convince them and get all the infrastructure that we need is important, it's paramount. But above all, transparency and also how to protect the data from the customers is also one of our top priority as well. So with that regards, I send it back to Siobhan. I think that's all from us three here, and thank you for the time.
Thank you so much for such a great discussion. So thanks to our moderator, Sonny Supuyadi from Maybank, and thank you to our panelists, Melesio Valerio from SWD Insurance and Billy Setiawan, who is from PT Bank Mandiri. Thank you so much, all of you, for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much. That's great. What a way to set up our conference for the next 2 days. So thank you so much for that great discussion. It's my huge pleasure to hand you over to our next speaker, who is Paul Moxon, who's the Senior Vice President for Data Architecture and Chief Evangelist with Denodo. Please prepare your questions and put them in the Q&A box, which Paul can answer just after the session.
Hello and welcome to this next session entitled Accelerating Data-Driven Enterprise Transformation in a Post-COVID World. My name's Paul Moxon. I am the Senior Vice President of Data Architectures at Denodo Technologies. As our economies start to emerge from the constraints of the pandemic, there are some key priorities for banks, both in the retail and the capital market sectors. These are revenue generation, cost management, For revenue generation, a lot of the priorities are going to be around better and more holistic customer engagement, omni-channel engagement, for example. And I differentiate omni-channel versus multi-channel. Multi-channel, most organizations, most banks have multi-channel integration, multi-channel engagements with their customers. But this is where the channels, whether it is online, mobile phone, mobile banking, in-person banking, etc., these offer different services. Omnichannel is you have the same services, the same set of services across these different engagement channels. And the customer can actually switch between the channels and still continue doing what they were doing before. This is true omnichannel integration. So I can start off doing something online banking and then continue and finish it off doing mobile banking as I'm walking out of the house or something like that. Frictionless digital onboarding. Many banks are offering this already, but some of the smaller banks, regional banks, etc., still have hurdles that the user, the customer, has to go through to actually do online banking, the digital engagement. And that has to be frictionless, because if that's a challenge, those customers will move to other banks where it's easier to get to that online banking. Open banking. There's very strong adoption of open banking in the European Union, in the UK, and in Australia. A lot of this is driven by regulations. PSD2, the Payment Services Directive, and GDPR are driving some of this open banking. A great example of open banking, how it can actually benefit, especially a retail bank, is Barclays Bank smartphone application. On the Barclays Bank smartphone application in the UK, you can view the balances, make payments, and so on from accounts held in 17 other UK banks. So the Barclays app becomes your financial management center. It's where you go to if you want to do any banking with any of those banks, or your credit card companies, etc. And that really cements your attachment to Barclays Bank. So it's great for customer loyalty, customer retention, etc. In the rest of the world, there's been slower adoption of open banking. In the US, it's been very slow. There is no regulatory framework like we have in the European Union. So it's largely driven by industry initiatives, and they always take longer to do. When we get to the area of cost management, it says there increased use of AI for decision making. We're already seeing this in a lot of the robotic process automation, and adding AI to the RPA robots, as it were, for intelligent automated decision making, and the exceptions are being handled by people. Over time, fewer and fewer exceptions will occur. We'll need fewer and fewer people to handle those exceptions, because the AI will get better, and it will be able to handle those, accept more and more of those exceptions. An interesting area that is coming up is emotional analysis. It's part of sentiment analysis. Most banks are doing sentiment analysis on their customers already, but incorporating emotional analysis to better understand the mood of the customers when they're communicating with us. Are they being sarcastic? Are they angry, or something like that? It gives you that better understanding of the feelings, the emotions of the customer, allows you to show a bit more empathy in the way that you respond to the customer. So it gives you better insights, helps you make better decisions, hopefully with better outcomes. Finally, regulatory compliance. Regulations, we did have some easing of the regulatory burdens during the COVID pandemic. To be honest with you, expect them to tighten up as the pandemic finally winds down and the economy starts to recover later this year. And certainly the new administration in the US is likely to add regulatory constraints back onto the banks. We can certainly expect that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, will regain its teeth that it lost in the previous administration. So banks are going to face increasing regulatory burdens, and they're going to need to manage costs and make it easier to comply with the regulatory reporting and compliance. Now, we saw many of these trends actually first emerge and start even accelerating during the pandemic. For example, digital transactions. During April and May, European and Asian banks reported over a 20% increase in online transactions versus the same period prior to the pandemic. So obviously people were doing more on their mobile devices, online devices, because they couldn't go into the actual physical bank branches themselves. And we also saw that bank branches were actually having to be closed down. Certainly in Intesa Sanpaolo in Italy, Commerzbank in Germany actually had to shut down some of their branches. Although there were essential services, they actually had to close some of their branches because they just didn't have enough staff to actually man them and perform any transactions there. The multi-channel integration goes back to what I previously said, my previous comments about omni-channel integration. Interacting with customers equally through the different channels, not offering different services on different channels. Now, you might like to think that these were just due to the COVID-19 pandemic and things are going to go back to normal by the end of this year. However, McKinsey has just released some research just in the past week that actually predicts that a lot of changes that occurred during the pandemic are actually here to stay. They forecast that 30% of the workforce will continue to work remotely. People won't necessarily have to go back into the office. We're seeing this with the big tech companies like Google and Facebook are allowing people to work from home until the end of this year. And the chances are they'll allow a lot of them to continue to do that. Digital interactions such as video calls are replacing in-person meetings, and online transactions, whether it is shopping for retail, whether it's banking, etc., will become more and more dominant, even though the shops and the bank branches, etc., are fully reopened with full services. People will still prefer to remain online. Now, we used to talk about the need for speed. That's a sort of a Top Gun quote there. But the reality, the pandemic has shown us that the real need is to be agile, to be able to rapidly change how we work, where we work, even change the work itself in response to the changing business circumstances. We had situations where Korean banks in the City of London were actually requiring their employees to commute into London at the height of the pandemic because it's the only way they could access their internal systems. They clearly were not set up for remote working. We had banks who had to create new loan products in real time in response to changing requirements from government programs for the payroll protection program in the US or the job retention scheme in the UK. Some banks were even forced to substitute their own loan programs because they couldn't create the government-backed loan products in time. They couldn't respond quick enough. And this actually resulted in very, very bad publicity for some of the banks because the small business owners were actually forced to take out bank loan products at a higher interest rate rather than the government-backed loan products, which were just not available through that particular bank. So it resulted in some very bad publicity for the banks themselves. Now, Gartner highlighted some top technology trends that will impact your business, and I want to focus on the data fabric trend. If we're going to deliver true omnichannel experience to our customers for better, closer engagement, if we're going to use AI-infused robotic process automation to drive efficiencies in our business processes, we need to be able to enable better and broader access to data within the organization and to be able to combine this with external data, but do this with governance, do this with security in mind. So effectively, we need to deliver data, timely, relevant, and accurate data to the business when they need it and how they need it. With this in mind, this is actually a architecture diagram, a architecture diagram from PricewaterhouseCoopers. I did steal it. And it actually highlights how the new normal for technology trends will result in data sitting in different locations, whether it's a data center, whether it's in the cloud, the public cloud, the private cloud, multiple different cloud providers, etc., sitting in applications, being driven by robotic process automation, etc. All of this data in all of these different places will somehow have to be funneled up to the people who need the data, people who are going to make decisions, people who are going to interact with your customers, etc. And the key to this is what PricewaterhouseCoopers call this integration fabric. It allows the users to find and access and utilize the data very easily, very quickly, allowing them to have those timely, accurate, and relevant insights into customer behavior so they can make better informed decisions. This is where data virtualization plays a key role. It's a critical factor in this integration fabric. Gartner and the other analysts call this the data fabric. We saw in that earlier slide rather than integration fabric. But it actually provides that layer that sits on top of your data sources, be they on the traditional on-premise data warehouses, databases, whether they're up in the cloud, whether they're in SaaS applications like Salesforce, Workday, NetSuite, etc. data that's in files, we still have lots of data that is sitting around in files. So the data fabric, the data virtualization layer, allows you to connect to your different data sources. It allows you to define how that data should be integrated, combined, transformed, and presented to your users as trusted, accurate, curated data sets, pre-integrated, pre-calculated, etc. And your users, the consumers, can just connect to the data virtualization platform to get the data that they need. So we talk about this connect, combine, consume. Connect your data sources, define how the data is going to be combined, and then the users consume it using their existing tools. So if you look at this in a little bit more detail, we have the data virtualization platform as this data fabric layer sitting between the underlying data sources that we've talked about and the users who need to access that data. You connect the data virtualization platform to your data sources, whatever they are, wherever they are. And you build what in Denodo terminology we call base views. Base views are abstraction of the underlying data entity. It could be a table in a database. It could be a REST API in an application. It could be an Excel spreadsheet, for example. That base view hides all of the complexities of where that data is located, how do I access it, what driver or protocol do I need to use to get to it, etc. It becomes a normalized representation of that data entity. And now I can reuse them. They're building blocks that I can reuse. I can combine to create higher level views, more meaningful views, until I eventually build something which the user needs. In our case, it's that customer 360. Combining data from different data sources to give a holistic view of the customer. The customer, the user, can access the data virtualization platform from their existing tools using standard protocols, standard formats, JDBC, ODBC, REST APIs, etc., OData APIs. So when they need the data, they can actually send a query to the data virtualization platform requesting that data. The data virtualization platform will go and get the data from those underlying data sources, data repositories, combine the data, transform the data as defined as that customer 360 view, and send the results back up to the users. The users then get the data they need. The data stays in the original repositories. It's retrieved on demand in real time by the data virtualization platform. So the data virtualization platform, acting as this data fabric, allows you to connect to almost any data source. I say almost because if I said any data source, a question would have come up in the chat about what about something weird and wonderful running on Windows NT or something like Win95 even. Allows you to connect to almost any data source, allows you to define how that data should be combined and transformed and integrated into something that's needed by the user. It's effectively a curated data set of data of known provenance, known trust, known value. The data then can be exposed to the users. The users can connect the data virtualization platform using the tools they're familiar with, using standard protocols, standard formats. And they can request the data, and the data will be retrieved for them in real time on demand. We don't have to copy it into a centralized repository, into a data warehouse, a data lake, or something like that. It stays where you put it. You put it in that data repository, that data warehouse, that database, etc., for a reason. So we leave it there and we go and retrieve it when you need it. These are some of the typical use cases that we see for these types of data virtualization, data fabric integration layers. Some very, very interesting ones there running from self-service analytics, data marketplace. We have JP Morgan Wealth and Asset Management building a data marketplace for their users using data virtualization, sitting on top of their systems of record, sitting on top of their data warehouse, sitting on top of their data lake. Combining and integrating data so that users have a single place to come and find the data they need. KYC, Know Your Customer initiatives, Customer 360 initiatives, a large European insurance company combining customer data from their MDM system with data from their policy databases, their claims databases, their marketing databases, their contact center, etc., and providing this 360-degree view of the customer. Not just the static, where do they live, what's their name, etc., type of information, but also the more dynamic transactional data coming from the claim system, the policy systems, and also the contact center. So you have this complete view of the customer, the products they've bought from you, the claims they've made, their interactions with you, etc. In terms of compliance, regulatory compliance, large commercial bank in the United States doing its CECL, current expected credit loss reports and liquidity reporting to the US Federal Reserve Bank and to the FDIC as well. We've got insurance companies implementing IFRS 17 reporting projects using data virtualization. And finally, companies who are complying with GDPR and CCPA regulations, the California Consumer Protection Act. Implementing the right to know and the right to be forgotten. The right to know is the right to know what information the company is storing about you. The right to be forgotten is the right to have this information deleted. And they're automating that using data virtualization, because doing it through manual processes means that you're more likely to make mistakes. And the European Union does not take kindly when you make mistakes with GDPR. They tend to fine you quite a lot. So an example of using data virtualization, using a data fabric for agility and flexibility is a US retail bank. It is based in the western half of the United States, 10,000 employees, $80 billion worth of assets under its management. It's a very well-known bank based in San Francisco. The bank actually got involved in the payroll protection, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is part of the US CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act. And this program, which was run by the Federal Small Business Administration, would make loans to small businesses and would actually forgive the loans if the business and kept its employees on the payroll. So it was basically giving a loan to the business so they could continue to hire retain their employees, pay their employees, etc., rather than them going on to unemployment assistance, like that. 15th of May, the Small Business Administration allowed the small business owners to actually apply for forgiveness for the loan. Obviously, they had to provide information about the fact that they'd been employing they'd kept their employees on the payroll, etc. And the small business owners had to fill in an online application and submit it to their loan provider, in this case, the bank. And then the bank would assess whether the small business had actually met the requirements of the loan. And based on that, they would actually forgive the loan. But obviously, the US government would pay the bank to cover the loan. The bank expected about 2,000 applications in the first month. They got 7,000 in the first 4 hours and 21,000 in the first 3 days, and it completely overwhelmed their system. Because they were administering this program on behalf of the Small Business Administration, they couldn't turn off the tap. They couldn't switch off the loans coming in. They had to leave it open. That was part of the requirements. And basically, they were drowning in applications. They really could not handle it. So they actually, because their loan system couldn't handle the overload, they actually used the data fabric, the data virtualization layer, to actually go and connect the data virtualization platform to all of these loan forgiveness applications. Combine that with information from the internal systems, the MDM system. If it was the bank's existing customer, they would then enrich that loan application with data coming from their bank's internal MDM system, and actually allow the account managers for that particular business to review the loan and then forgive it or whatever. If it wasn't a customer of the bank, the data virtualization layer would enrich that loan forgiveness application with data coming from the NAICS system, so we could actually classify what type of organization it was. Also pulling in information from Dun & Bradstreet, etc., to enrich that about more information about the actual business itself. So that could be routed out to a different set of loan managers who would decide whether to forgive it or not. So this actually, in 22 hours, starting 8 a.m. Monday morning, actually went live into production 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. In 22 hours, the bank actually built a brand new process, a brand new workflow to handle all these loans. It actually allowed them to deliver the responses to these loan forgiveness applications. Without this, the bank would have been struggling, and obviously bad publicity, but the flexibility that the data fabric, the data virtualization gave them, the ability to very, very quickly change the way they worked, change and adapt the way they worked, allowed them to handle this problem without any negative effect, no bad publicity, etc. So key takeaways. The post-pandemic world will still require us to be agile. Things will still change quickly. We're not going back to the old way of working. It is the new normal, so we need to pivot quickly to address new challenges. We'll need to build solutions in hours and days and not weeks and months. You won't have that much time to build your solutions. Somebody will come and take those customers away from you. Banks need to provide the integrated multi-channel, omni-channel delivery to customers, breaking down data and application silos, engaging customers with all and any channel, not just limiting services to one particular channel. An agile integration fabric is required, a data fabric, should I say, is required to support these challenges. Data virtualization is core to that. We saw the types of use cases that we've seen with data virtualization, so self-service analytics, regulatory reporting, mergers and acquisitions, integration, rapid deployment of agile solutions like we saw with the West Coast Bank. So with that, just before we get to the end, we do have some great resources available for you. You can come and visit us at the exhibit area, virtual exhibit area, or you can take a test drive of the data virtualization platform. If you really want to try it out yourself, you can take a test drive or you can do a free trial. Just go to the Denodo website, www.denodo.com, and you should be able to try it out yourself. And with that, just coming up to the end of the time, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it informative. I'd love to talk to you some more. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you so much to Paul Moxon there from Denodo, who gave such a great presentation. We have a couple of minutes. Hi, Paul. We have a couple of minutes to take some questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Paul, the first question that we've had come through is, can you explain a bit more about how a data fabric helps with regulatory reporting and compliance? Paul, I think you might be on mute.
I did.
Go ahead, we can hear now, thank you.
Okay, I managed to do one but not the other.
No, you did not.
Technology challenged. Proves it live, I suppose. Okay, in answer to your question, I think the easiest way for me to explain this is by using an example of a US commercial bank. It's CIT Group based in New York. They are actually designated as a SIFI organization, systemically important financial institution in the United States. They have over $50 billion worth of assets under management. They built a data fabric to provide a single view of risk across the whole organization, their retail bank, their commercial bank, etc. And then they expanded that into a data fabric, and they called it their data platform as the one place to go to get trusted, approved data across the whole organization. And this data is now the basis for regulatory reporting to the US Federal Reserve Bank. It could be the Y14 capital assessment reports, the CECL reporting, or liquidity reporting into the FDIC. There's also non-FSI companies who are using data fabric to comply with GDPR and CCPA requirements regarding the right to know, the right to be forgotten, etc. So that's the sort of regulatory reporting and compliance I'm talking about.
Excellent. One more question that we've got for you that's come in. Which FSI companies are using Denodo as a data fabric?
Okay, let's try and keep this short. So we've got some of the big banks like JP Morgan, Bank of New York Mellon in the United States, BNP Paribas in France, Nomura Bank in Japan, UBS, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation. If you want to look at financial asset management companies, Prudential Finance in the United States, going then through into insurance companies like Nationwide Insurance, Progressive Insurance, etc. So it's a broad range of FSI companies using Denodo as data fabric.
Excellent. Paul, that was such an interesting presentation. It's such a great big picture perspective on it. So thank you so much. Thank you for and for taking questions.
No, thank you very much, everyone.
Of course, if anybody has more questions of Paul, please contact him on LinkedIn. So thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
On to our next session. We are very delighted to hear on the topic of what does it take to build a truly data-driven organizational culture. We are going to hear from Ram Kumar, who is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer from Cigna. So please prepare your questions. So Ram will be answering them at the end of the session.
I'm Ram Kumar. I'm the Chief Data and Analytics Officer for Cigna. Cigna is a global health services company with over US 160 billion in revenue, and it's ranked number 13 among the top 50 corporates in the US in terms of revenue. Cigna operates in over 30 countries across various regions, namely Australia, New Zealand, Asia, EMEA, and the Americas. I'm responsible for building data analytics capability in 30 countries. And today's presentation that I'm going to speak about is on building a data-driven culture in an organization, which is near and dear to my heart. And so let's go straight into the presentation. Today, the potential for data-driven business strategies is greater than ever. For some organizations, data and analytics has become a primary driver of their business strategy. It is part of everything they do. These organizations ask themselves different but important questions, such as how can we treat data as a strategic and competitive asset? What does it mean? With this data or this type of insight, how could we fundamentally change the value propositions for our customers and partners? How can we create new data-led intelligent products and services that could be a key differentiator in the market? How do we focus on key data foundational areas that would help create a democratized data environment in order to enable value creation out of data? Conceiving and answering these types of questions require an expanded set of data and analytics competencies as an organization that embraces data literacy, which is part of a data culture. It is not just the data and analytics function or the department that are responsible for this, but the entire organization must get involved. Data and analytics success over competitors requires a much more expansive role for data and analytics in business value generation. It requires executives to weave data and analytics into everything their organization does. This is not a simple exercise for various reasons. And in a data-driven enterprise, data and analytics are no longer afterthoughts. They are fundamental to digital business transformation or other large transformational programs. Yet the ability to think in data is difficult for most enterprises. Most organizations are not used to thinking about working with data while performing analysis. Increasingly, organizations are realizing this and beginning to look at data and analytics in a new way. Data analytics are becoming a primary driver of value generation and business strategy for data-driven organizations. This profoundly impacts the work of a data analytics function and the organization competencies that must be built to support them. Many organizations face a major shift when they consider their data-driven ambitions. This shift does not simply change the allocation of work, it changes the nature of their business by making data a primary consideration for business strategies. And talking about digital business. Digital business transformation is becoming increasingly more important since COVID-19 pandemic. Many businesses of all sizes have closed down due to lack of digital solution during this period. And it's really sad. Data, to me, is the lifeblood of digital business. organizations that struggle with becoming data-driven are also likely to struggle with digital business transformation. And it is sad that many do not realize it, despite the world we are living in is very much data-driven. A digital business cannot exist without data and analytics. So what enables AI, data engineering, and data science? As you can see in this diagram, data is the center. And data is, that's why it's called the lifeblood. And it enables people, process, and technology to work together. And this is very important. And if organizations think like this, then they will use data as the center of the business, center of whatever they do, and have supporting tools, technology, processes to enable data. So what is a data-driven organization culture? This is an important question. There's when you look at literature, when you look at, do a Google search, when you look at many organizations, when you look at their data strategy, the general view I notice is that the belief is that if an organization is able to create value out of data through analytics, then the organization has a data-driven culture. To me, that's only a small component of the culture, and it's not, it doesn't really mean that an organization has a data-driven culture. So performing analytics or advanced analytics and building data intelligent solutions to drive business outcomes does not necessarily mean an organization is data-driven or has a data-driven culture. So what is a data-driven culture? How do you claim that an organization has a data-driven culture? So how the life cycle of data is managed and governed effectively and efficiently, that would enable an organization to organize, enable or democratize its data for consumption to drive activities in an acceptable manner in order to make informed decisions, create value, resolve conflicts, and manage risks. So you can see the difference. It's about managing and governing the life cycle of data, which is the strategic asset or the competitive asset. And so this slide is again some fun. It explains the fundamentals. When I talk to a lot of people, when I interview a lot of data scientists or people in analytical professionals, and when I look at what is taught in universities, I mean, I look at do Google search to look at literature, majority of the cases, nobody talks about data lifecycle. And if I ask people questions around what is a data lifecycle, it's quite surprising that people have no clue. Many of them, actually. So a data lifecycle starts from collection of data, the way you collect the data, why you collect the data, how you collect the data, from whom you collect the data. All those things are important. And how do you organize the data, which includes classifying the data according to its significance. How do you store the data, whether it's on-prem or off-prem, because if it's off-prem on the cloud, then you have other requirements around privacy, legal, regulatory aspects. Then how do you use the data, which is the analytical piece? And also how do you retain or destruct the data? And because as surveys and research has shown that the more data you keep, when there is a litigation, the chances are that it's going to be a risk. And supporting that life cycle is data quality, which includes metadata, data lineage, master data, reference data. And then you have this data risk, which is around data ethics, data privacy, data security, then the legal and regulatory compliance on that. So while there has been tremendous increase in the volume of data of various types, massive improvements in technology and infrastructure to support data processing, but the principles of data management and governance remain the same. Things like data stewardship and standards, data architecture, data retention, data quality, metadata, master data, privacy, ethics, security, data governance, all those things remain the same. But close to 80% of the effort we know that is spent on preparing data for value creation. But that is where the area of data management and governance comes in place. How do you simplify that? is things that is an area of concern for many of us. And still a lot of work has been done in that area. We have to reduce that 80% as much as possible. And it's not easy for various reasons. So what is a benchmark for a data-driven value creation? I use this as a benchmark. And data-driven value creation is critical for driving the culture, because at the end of the day, you want to create value out of data if you want to build a strong culture. So I love the quote from Admiral Mary Hopper, who invented COBOL in 1965. This was a quote: "Someday on the corporate financial balance sheet, there will be an entry that reads information, for in most cases, the information is more valuable than the software and hardware that processes it." And there's a lot of work being done in this area to see how we can measure the value of data and put it in the financial balance sheet of an organization. And data monetization is a huge topic. Everyone talks about data monetization. To me, it's about measuring financial and strategic impact, because data monetization can be within internal or could be external. And it doesn't need that you were to make money. It could be to do with make money out of selling data or anything. It could be to do with improving your processes, operations, and stuff. At the end of the day, it contributes to bottom line and top line. It's the whole game. And there are many things associated with data monetization. For example, you want to improve your products and services based on the data points you have collected, looking at and analyzing the data and see where there are gaps, where there are room for improvement, and that could contribute to monetization. Improving customer and partner experience by taking feedback from your customers, like NPS scores and partners, and then again analyzing the data and see what actions could be done to improve it. And then driving sales and marketing. This is quite straightforward, using data, things like customer retention, next best sale, best offers, and so forth. And reducing operational cost, looking at improving the way we operate, whether it is customer facing or whether it's your operation with your partners or internal operations, achieving operational efficiency. And again, that is using data, that we use data to understand the current state. And then that also contributes to monetization, improve productivity and efficiencies within the organization, the way we deal with our customers, the way we deal with our partners, how do we improve our processes, how to create efficiencies, offer new value add services to your customers and partners. More than what you do within an organization, you can provide add-ons to your customers and partners. For example, insurance companies. There are many insurance companies who provide value-add services in addition to just issuing the policy and dealing with the customer during claims, but they want to touch the customer throughout the life cycle of the customer with them. Reduce risk and improve compliance. Again, this is a very important area. Managing risk saves cost, like penalties and stuff. And again, let's key contributor to data monetization. Then again, developing new products and services, or new markets, creating new markets, and again, based on data analysis, market data and other data that you gather, you do an analysis, and then you decide your product strategy. That again contributes to data monetization. And the one thing that often talked about is offering access to your data and selling data to create a new revenue stream, or things like data partnership, where you bring data from various organizations, you create a consortium, and then by consolidating the data, you might be able to build customized solutions. This is an area that is discussed a lot nowadays, and this will determine the future of data science or AI. It's about ethical use of data, finding the right balance between data innovation and data monetization using a risk lens. So looking at this diagram, technically what we can do with the data, we should be clear about it, but then what an organization would like to do, because what we can do with the data technically from a legal and compliance perspective could be different than what an organization would like to do in terms of exploiting the data. And then There is things around what can be done legally, then what is the ethical position. You might comply from a privacy, legal, and regulatory perspective for using data, but ethically, what you try to do may not be the right thing to do. So ethical position should be linked to your organization's core values, and you need to, for any organization that use data-driven value creation, they should have an ethics framework that takes different lenses, for example, social lenses, privacy lens, legal, regulatory lens, to decide whether a project around data analytics, specific project or specific use case is worth doing. So what are the hallmarks of a true data-driven organization? Data culture driven from the top with accountability. So it should be driven right from the senior executive level, CEO or the board, and they should take accountability. I don't believe in sponsorship, because a CEO can sponsor many projects, but that doesn't mean that the CEO takes accountability. So it's very important that these senior executives should lead from the front or lead by example if they want to build a data-driven culture, because data-driven culture can only work when it's top-down and bottom-up. Treat data as a strategic and competitive asset. It's nice to say this, but you have to do something about it. Many organizations talk about it, but they don't do much about it. But then in order to do it, that's where things around governance comes in place. Governing the life cycle of data to enable value creation. And how do you govern it, and how do you enable the data? Traditional approaches no longer work around data governance. You need to have smart data governance approach to enable value creation. Have clearly defined data analytics strategy and execute it diligently. So this is again important. You might have a vision, 5-year vision, but you got to have clearly defined milestones and deliverables that can build capability for your organization data analytics, and at the same time improve data literacy and also create value. Invest in skills, capabilities, competencies development, and talent management in data analytics. This is a very important area because data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century. And it's important that you nurture talent and ensure that you retain talent. And that requires continuous improvement from a capability development perspective. Democratize data for access and use. It's a difficult area, but it's a very important area, and it's the data foundation. You need to make data available for everyone in the organization if they want to exploit the data and create value, but in an acceptable manner. Acceptable manner is very important from a privacy, ethical, legal, and regulatory perspective. You should bring people, process, technology, and the culture to work together to democratize data. So every function should work together to contribute to democratizing data. Create a data playground for easy access to and play with data. And it's kind of a sandbox environment where people should be able to have access to data and exploit the data, experiment with the data, and see what value you could create out of data, do some innovative work. And it's very important for data scientists to have this data playground. And then again, pilot experiment use cases. There should be a lot of pilots and experiments, because what you don't know is what you don't know. So pilots and experiments will help you narrow down your focus areas, and it should be quick. So basically learning fast. So test fast, fail fast, learn fast. And that's what the pilot experiments objective should be. And if you want to drive a culture, the question of accountability comes in place. And in order to ensure that employees have accountability in driving that culture, there should be data-related KPIs in the balanced scorecard for employees. Like for as part of the goal-setting exercise, there should be KPI so that they can measure and reward them based on their contribution to driving that culture. And this should be in the balance. This data-related KPI should be a key KPI in the organization's balance scorecard, as well as in the executive's balance scorecard. Identify, defines, and execute business-driven analytical use cases. Again, focus where the impact is high. where value creation can be measured, and also slowly help build capability within the organization. And for that to happen, you need to have clearly defined use cases, and you should be very focused in driving those use cases and implementing them and take the business through the journey. Measure and inform value creation through analytics, use case operationalization. You might build wonderful models and predictive models and deep learning and machine learning, whatever you name it. But if you're unable to operationalize it, then there's no point of doing that work. And so it's important for any analytical use cases that you implement that you are able to measure. And in order to measure, you need to ensure that the business is ready to operationalize them. Continuous testing and continuous improvement mindset. This is very important for any organization to be data-driven. So when you look at many data-driven organizations, for example, LinkedIn, every day they do something like 500, 600 tests so that they can continuously learn and improve. And that mindset is very important for organizations who want to drive a data-driven culture. Undermine, hippos, and use analytics to inform, influence the influencer. Hippos are highly paid person's opinion, and they are quite dangerous for an organization. They don't want to listen to, they don't want to make decisions using data as an evidence. They think that they know everything because they've been in the industry for 30 years. So it's very important that you educate them so that they can use data or insights as a supporting mechanism to help them make decisions and help influence the influencers. Using data as a critical evidence to help inform and influence the strategy. It's evidence-based culture, so data-driven insights and outcomes should be used to influence business strategy as well as data and analytics strategy or technology strategy, whatever it is, and rather than making assumptions. So the evidences based on facts play a critical role in influencing your strategy. And this I discussed, finding the right balance between data monetization and acceptable use of data, which we went through it. That's also an important piece. So I would like to thank you for your time, and we'll just close off this presentation with two quotes. The first quote is from Albert Einstein, and I relate this very directly to information or data management. Still a lot of work has to be done in the area of data management and data foundations, but unfortunately there's so much of focus only on the analytics side because people take for granted that data is available. So I relate information or data management to insanity, because you don't solve the fundamental problem while you expect different results. You can't. Unless the fundamental problems are fixed, for example, data quality, things like that, the outcomes are going to be a problem. So that's what I wanted to leave you guys with. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. And thank you so much, Ram, for a great presentation. We do have time for just one question that's come through. That question is, how do I prioritize analytics use cases when each department in my company has requirements?
That's a good question. I have that big challenge, because I have 30 CEOs to deal with. So 30 different businesses across different countries, and they all want to do analytics. And so they have all these use cases, wonderful use cases to help build capability and create value. So best way to approach that is to be more practical and realistic. And so what we have done is that we built a use case prioritization framework that uses various filters from a business perspective as well as from an organization perspective, because organization has a strategic objective, whereas each business department have their own objectives. And obviously the P&L departments would try to focus very much on their P&L part and not necessarily the organization part. So what we have done, we have built this prioritization framework that takes various filters, which is specific to the business, like, for example, availability of data, quick win, size of price, business commitment to operationalization, and can this work be leveraged by other departments? And then you have certain filters, an organization filters. It's like economies of scale, and whether it's directly related to some of the strategic themes of the organization, like affordability, growth. And then again, from an analytics perspective, if you're running analytics function, you don't get a blank check. You have a limited funding and you have limited resources. So then we use all these filters, and then we apply all those use cases, and then come up with the top priority use cases. And then what we do is that just because we came up with the top priority use cases that we execute throughout the year, over the year, what we do is that every quarter we make sure we review the use cases again with the business to make sure they are still in line with what they want to achieve, because things might have changed. And then we go through a reprioritization exercise every quarter. But throughout that process, if we believe that the business who claim that they will be ready to operationalize it and they are not ready to operationalize the outcome, we stop the project. I know it's a difficult decision. We just stop it, because there's no point doing some cool work when you cannot operationalize, and if you cannot operationalize, you cannot measure value. So that's how the process we follow. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ram, and thanks for such a great presentation. Really appreciate your time with us.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye.
Excellent. That takes us to our next session, which is going to be presented by Alexandre Hubert, who is the Vice President of Sales Engineering at APAC for Dataiku. And the topic that Alexandre is going to be speaking to is how AI is transforming financial services.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Very pleased to be there presenting today for the CDAO FSI conferences. My name is Alex Hubert. I work for Dataiku, and today it will be my pleasure to talk to you about scaling AI in the banking world. We will try to basically give you some insight about what we see right now with our different prospects, the different trends that are into the market, give our perspective, which is quite broad, quite rich, considering the presence that we start to have now in the space, and hopefully that's going to be a relevant message for some of you today. About Dataiku, so we are now not a startup anymore. I would say we're definitely one of the leader in the software space for AI, machine learning, and operationalization of all those models. The broad scope of our platform allows us to work across all different industries, and we are also represented by our extensive partner network, working alongside Microsoft, AWS, and Google, especially because the world is moving towards the cloud. This is going to be one of the topics we'll be mentioning today. And overall, our approach and our philosophy regarding AI, machine learning, and its operationalization is quite well regarded by Gartner and Forrester, who has mentioned us as leaders the past few years. So within the financial services, well, obviously we have a growing presence over there. One of the main reasons is, again, like because of what we do, and because of the amount of data that is being captured by financial institutions, and the amount of change that we see within financial institutions, our product is extremely relevant for them, and it goes really across the scope of finance and insurance. We're definitely not a vertical solution. We address all the different challenges that financial institution and Fortune 500 financial institution can face. The different trends in the space right now. Well, we can decouple them in a couple of categories, and I would say that one of the first key one is definitely the acceleration towards the cloud, from on-prem to the cloud. Obviously, where the regulator allows it, not all the data can be shared that easily. So we see a lot of things happening, and very interesting things happening right now regarding tokenization, anonymization, to make sure that those data can arrive on the cloud again when this is permitted. And the real reason behind this is because the size of the data set have dramatically increased, and we all recognize now the need for scalable compute. Hadoop was part of the answer, but it's an answer that is now a little bit outdated, and the cloud providers definitely give a better answer to these things. And then the second category is really around MLOps and AI governance overall. It's very important within the organization to know who has built what with what type of data. There is an increased need for all those type of validation teams. Once again, because the regulator is going to expect financial institutions to explain their models, or simply because sometimes there's just new ways of measuring risk, and these teams are greatly needed. And then data science in itself has changed from the past 5 years, I would say, from something that used to be simply nice, cool, to something that has to now deliver value within this organization. So it's very critical to have the necessary pieces to make sure that we can measure the output of data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, the actual impact on the business, and potentially correct things when things needs to be corrected. So all of that, and because of the massive pandemic, obviously, that we've seen, has significantly increased the need for agility. We needed to be agile before the pandemic. The pandemic is not the reason why our financial organizations are now becoming more agile. They've been disrupted by fintech, insurtech for now 10, 15 years almost. They have better access the customers have better access to information online. They are less reliant on some expertise that a service provider can give, but the quality of the service they're much more demanding on the quality of the service they expect. They want better response time for loan quality. They want better recommendation for their investment strategy, for instance, and all of that was definitely accelerated throughout the pandemic because we tend to spend much more time in front of our laptops and iPhones. There's also, as a consequence of that, a lot more information that can be captured as form of images, data sets, and it requires always a certain type of expertise to analyze those new data sets and those new type of information. Sometimes for some financial institution, the expertise is in-house, but for most of them, that expertise is not there. You have to hire expert machine learning engineers, expert data scientists, and the problem is the competition is quite fierce to attract those talent and then also to retain them. So it's quite a bit of a challenge to invest so much time to try to attract someone, to form them, teach them the way the bank is operating, to see them leaving the organization not so long after joining it. So it's definitely a bit of a challenge, and a challenge that needs to be addressed. And how this is being addressed? Well, through collaboration, through inclusion. Now more and more, it's a topic that banking institutions cannot ignore. The combination of what we do realize is that instead of hiring one expert at simply machine learning or deep learning or whatever, banking organization realize that they can combine the talent that they already have internally. They definitely have someone that has a lot of expertise about the data, about the business. They've been at the bank for 15, 20 years. They're definitely not expert at deep learning, but they might have a series of new grads potentially working on another desk, on another department, pretty similar core business activities, But the collaboration of those two people is going to, first of all, probably stay in the bank for quite a long time and not change because a new job offering has been posted on some more fancier startup website. And that expertise from the business is really what's going to deliver value ultimately for the organization. But what we're describing right now, like that combination of people that have been there a long time, people that have a different type of skill set, that definitely requires a new set of processes, new functions that are slowly being implemented in those organizations. For instance, who is going to validate the work that has been produced? Once again, how do we measure the quality of the output? The traditional metric that we used to look upon, are they still relevant? That's a lot of question to address on the potential infinite set of use cases, because the use cases themselves, so some of them are completely new, but a lot of them have been there forever. And actually, what's interesting the past few years is that we finally, the hype around AI start to calm down a little, and people now start to make the difference between what is advanced, high level, I would say, complexity, AI-driven, machine learning-driven type of activities and use cases, and the type of use cases that can simply be enhanced through the power of automation. We used to combine those two concepts, automation and AI. Now things start to be a little bit more decoupled. So, for instance, a lot of traditional sector in the financial space, anything like compliance, financial crime, we do realize that a lot of it can be simply automated. It's probably not the best candidate for AI, although we start to see some significant improvement with deep learning and NLP techniques over there to be better at understanding the customer, potentially finding stuff that are not exactly compliant with the way the bank should be doing business. But first and foremost, those sectors and those part of the business are going to be enhanced through automation. And what is at the forefront of the innovation, really touched by data science, artificial intelligence, the core business that is touched by data scientists, it's anything that has a direct interaction with the customer. So anything like client scoring, next best station on the website, but not only. I was reading, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago, that the new models of risk in finance are slowly being rolled out. So once again, it's a debate whether it's going to be considered as AI or simply new mathematical formulas. I will let that for the expert to decide. But those new models from Matthew Rosenbaum, for instance, new volatility model to understand and better price, better anticipate some market move. They need to be implemented. They are of high value for a potential trading desk, and they need to be considered. So basically, what that large suite of use cases is showing is that there is definitely a trade-off to consider when we start a use case between the value that it can output, the complexity from an AI and machine learning standpoint, and also the level of automation that simply can be attached to the use case. Some use cases are really good candidate for automation, and some of them are probably a little less. So ultimately, right now, a lot of time is still spent on the low-hanging fruit, I would say, which is really around automation, so lower technicity, with potential still high impact for the business. So once again, we're talking about regulatory compliances, anything that is going to be around trying to lower the cost. If we automate all that reporting, transaction reporting, that's potentially some FTE that we can assign to other type of activities. That's great for the organization. And through maturity, the more we take those low hanging fruit, the more the organization becomes mature regarding its AI initiative, and the more it can start to focus its time on reinventing itself with advanced AI. Once again, we're talking about the use cases that are still in the pipe right now that we start to see: chatbots, simply sending, for instance, the image of a car to get an idea of how much you're going to be reimbursed for that damages. Some very advanced fraud detection models probably sit in the middle, but with a bit of automation, I can send, and we have a lot of startups doing this right now, where you just simply take a picture of yourself. They do validate that it's indeed you, and then you can talk to the right customer advisor. We start to be really at the cross section between automation and advanced AI, but this is possible because the maturity regarding AI, the maturity regarding automation, is moving forward. And all of those use cases and that maturity curve, really, the biggest hurdles that are stopping it to move faster towards those very advanced potential high value use cases, they are pretty much still the same. We're going to be talking about quality of data, access to talent, and it's hurdles that we've been talking about those past few minutes. Quality of data, access to talent, access to data, whether you trust AI or not, and then technological maturity. All of those elements were captured by EY last year. A year later, even throughout the pandemic, I'm pretty sure that these hurdles won't change too much. Maybe the percentages would be slightly different, but overall it's the same. It's pretty much the same topic. We captured new data sets, potentially of great value, but is this enough? Is the quality in there enough to make sure that we can build some great machine learning use cases with them? Who is going to validate that new potential machine learning use cases we're going to build upon that are valuable, especially with some data that are so new? We have so little historical information about this. What does prove that it's going to actually work in production and in practice? Access to talent, it's again something that we've talked about. You hire someone, how do you make sure that that person can be there 2 years, 3 years later? It takes time to understand the business. You need to invest that time. And if after 2 or 3 years, when the employee has finally grasped the full business, he goes to the competition, that's definitely some time lost. The technology maturity is obviously a very important one. And it's probably a very interesting one because we know that in those big organizations, the putting in place the right technology strategy to potentially transition from on-prem to the cloud, to offset a certain type of technology can take time. And we are at a time where we live in an era where technology evolves extremely fast. So you have that disconnect between the time that is required for the leaders of those organizations to decide which technology they're going to adopt for the future, but at the same time, the technology doesn't wait for them to take this decision and is just moving forward. So all of that is definitely some blockers to decide how you're going to build AI, how you're going to build on automation and reap off the benefit of this. And ultimately, all of these questions, all of those hurdles take a lot of time. And there is a lot of things to consider. Once again, access to data, access to talent, revamp all the processes that used to be extremely efficient in the traditional world of analytics, but are probably not flexible enough right now to face the new challenges, the new competition, the new demand from the market, the new demand from the customers. We don't have that time as leaders. The organization we talk to don't have that time. There's a lot of stuff to do and not enough time, which is a massive problem. And And how this is exemplified the most is, well, all of those little tasks can be basically tackled with one specific tool. So this is a slide that we like to show a lot at Dataiku, that we call Technoslavia, which categorize in each of those little countries the different type of tools that you may need to tackle the specific part of the AI journey. I might look for the best infrastructure tooling to support my data science initiative. I may look for the best NoSQL database to handle all those real-time events. Non-structured information, and potentially analyze those data later. But then what is extremely inefficient and then time consuming is to try to make all those little components, all those little tools to work together. And then on top of that, you need to add another layer of complexity. Each time I need to have one expert at this tool, and the expert at this tool is going to try to explain to another expert at another tool, at another part of the journey, what he was trying to do. This is very inefficient. They might lose themselves because they're not talking the same language, they're not using the same tool. They simply don't have the same priorities, and a lot of the effort can be lost in trying once again to make all of that work at the end of the day. That's what we see as one of the most reasons for failure of operationalization. You have, unfortunately, a plethora of different solutions that people on the upside are trying to make work together. They are taking the work from a data analyst, they're taking the work from a data scientist, they're taking the work from statisticians, and they spend their time trying to understand, first of all, the job that they did, and trying to make them collaborate together through APIs, through automation tools. That's broadly inefficient. That makes things extremely more costful and more slowly. Not to mention that those solutions are very often not in line with the need for compute, the need for scale. A lot of people are still using samples to build their machine learning models. A lot of them are still receiving a new sample to do what would be called automation. So it's not efficient at all, and a new way of operating is needed, and that's the reason why we're being so successful on that sector. Because instead of giving a lot of different products, a lot of different tools to the different user base within the organization, we have one product, one platform that everyone is going to use to collaborate around the data pipeline, around the data journey, to make sure that something can be deployed in production much faster. Once again, I don't have to have a Jupyter Notebook to be integrated with my data quality, my data cleaning processes, because all of that is in the same workflow. I don't need to recode all of that when I'm going to deploy that into production, because I'm just giving that workflow to a data engineer, to an ops team that is going to monitor that into production. And even more importantly, because the platform is directly connected to data sources in the cloud or on-prem, the need for scalability is completely addressed at the beginning. Meaning that when you build something, in a sense, you build it with the right data that the bank has spent so much time and effort to capture. And ultimately, this is the real value that we do deliver. With a mixed set of tooling, the governance is pretty difficult on the IT side or for VP of analytics or whoever. The compute is not as optimal as what it could be. And the technical setup is quite difficult to administrate and to simply update, upgrade. That can take a lot of time if everything is on laptops. That need for governance is extremely critical. That's one of the main reasons why right now people are talking to us, because they feel the competition being much more agile, much faster, and they know that they could be faster, but right now they don't have the right set of processes and the right set of governance in place to face that competition effectively. So the key takeaways from that presentation. This one is obviously a little bit cliche. We hear that a lot, very fast, but fell forward as well. Focusing the time on AI, it's great, but probably starting by making the right dichotomy between what is AI, what is automation, and then focusing the time on a lot of lower technicity tasks that can perfectly be automated and can be of high value for the organization. It's definitely something to consider. And this is something that will, learning from that experience, will then allow to gain in maturity and to start focusing time on some more very advanced use cases. You can still do advanced use cases, but what I would call very advanced use cases. Democratization and centralization is definitely the answer for AI acceleration. We don't want to have to hire only specialists. We want to leverage the broader user base that we have internally, people that have been at the bank for 15, 20 years, and the new data scientists. If we make them collaborate on the same framework, well, first of all, the time to develop a use case is going to decrease from potentially 6 months to sometimes what we've seen 1-2 weeks sometimes. It's much easier to govern. It's much easier for validation team to say that is in line with the regulator expectation, and to simply iterate and move forward. And then obviously the final one is the most critical asset, once again, is time. And instead of trying to build the right stack with the right tool, the best tool with the best people, which adds a lot of complexity, maybe one of an alternative approach, and the approach that we're rooting for is definitely to have one centralized view that helps govern data science better and ultimately produce value faster. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today.
Excellent, and thank you so much to Alexandre for that presentation. If you would like to ask any questions of Alexandre Hubert from Dataiku, please put them in the Q&A chat, or you can contact him via LinkedIn. Either way, they will respond to your questions. That brings us to our next session, which is titled Getting Up the Value Chain. How do you demonstrate value in a time of uncertainty? And we are very pleased to have with us Anish Agarwal, who is the Director of Data and Analytics India for NatWest Group.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Anish, and I work in the capacity of Director for Data and Analytics at NatWest Group, India. Today's topic for our session is getting up the value chain using analytics. And today's successful modern experience business runs on analytics. This fact-based approach to operations enables the business to identify issues and opportunities more quickly and precisely, and address them more effectively. Companies have widely embraced the use of analytics to streamline operations and improve processes. But implementing analytics data that informs intelligent and effective business decisions is not as easy as snap of the fingers. In a survey conducted by Bloomberg, nearly 97% of respondents reported their companies have adopted analytics. The 3 most sought after goals were the ability to reduce costs, increase profitability, and improve risk management. However, many organizations struggle with making sure the data is accurate and consistent. And while we're talking about data, I think it's also important for us to talk about the big data. Well, the emerging data economy, the 4th industrial revolution, and the big data, of course, wherein data is the new oil. Data is world's most valuable resource, where oil is no longer the world's most valuable resource. And this is what you see on the screen. Data, the world's most valuable resource, covered by The Economist magazine in its edition dated May 6, 2017. Well, the data, which is a core input of the fourth industrial revolution, is recognized as raw materials such as petroleum and has become a source of competition that overwhelms existing production factors, labor, and capital. Data is the new oil, and the best way for companies to access and understand is to digitize their processes. Digitizing customer interactions can provide troves of information which companies can feed into strategy, sales, marketing, and product development. Detailed and granular data can enable companies to micro-target their customers and to personalize their products and services as well. Further, internal digitization generates data that managers can use to improve their operations, including routing and transportation, resource allocation and scheduling, capacity planning, and of course, in the manufacturing space as well. These trends also are causing many companies to converge their business intelligence and operations research units on the common ground of predictive and advanced data and analytics. Both communities are now using statistical and mathematical techniques to attack strategic business problems and systemize business decision making as well. So, enhancing the value proposition using data and analytics. Well, analytics data is everywhere, and sorting the data is something, all about to find what is useful and pertinent to our business, wherein the necessary skills needs to be effective in the current marketplace. These days, analytics is being used for everything from predicting Supreme Court case outcomes to enhancing marketing campaigns and sales analytics. Data and analytics are disrupting existing business models and ecosystems. Proliferation of new data sets and introduction of massive data migration capabilities are undermining the existing information and technological silos as well. From using granular data to personalized products and services to scaling digital platforms to match buyers and sellers, companies are using business analytics to enable more and faster fact-based decision making. In fact, studies show that data-driven organizations not only make better strategic decisions, but they also enjoy high operational efficiency, improve customer satisfaction, robust profit, and revenue levels. Recent research also shows that data-centered organizations are 23 times more likely to acquire customers, 6 times as likely to retain those customers, and 19 times as likely to be profitable as a result. So let's understand how analytics can help an enterprise enhance its value proposition. The very first of the league is analyzing the data to identify business opportunities. What this means essentially is analyzing data more often than not, increasing the efficiency, but also trying to identify new business opportunities that may have been otherwise overlooked, such as untapped customer segments. In doing so, the potential for growth and profitability becomes endless and more intelligent based. Many professionals can discern short-term trends, but are less proficient at predicting obstacles that plague their businesses down the road. Computer models based on data analytics help companies see shift in what customers buy and give a clear picture of what products should be highlighted or updated. Whether it's a production concern, a customer service issue, or a deficiency amongst the employees, analytics can help to highlight the key areas of concern when it comes to the venture's ability to make a profit. Data analytics can be utilized as a human resource tool as well. Applications of AI and machine learning are transforming the hiring process in many organizations, while applications of data analytics and people management are information decisions on promotions, performance evaluations, employee engagement, and professional development as well. The next is making most out of the consumer patterns. In an increasingly customer-oriented era, organizations have amassed wealth of consumer information and data. In order to remain competitive, it is imperative for organizations to use these consumer insights to shape their products, solutions, and buying experiences. Research from McKinsey suggests that organizations that are using their consumer behavior insights strategically are outperforming their peers by 85% in sales growth margins and more than 25% in gross margins. Surprisingly, great statistic. Hence, it is important for managers to consider the strategic importance of consumer information as well. A comprehensive and refined understanding of customers through thoughtful market segmentation can offer managers insightful narrative about buying habits and preferences. A telecom company, for instance, can use advanced and predictive analytical models to reduce customer churn and measure effectiveness of marketing campaigns. Similarly, an online retailer can understand its web presence by seeking answers to questions such as mix of new and returning visitors, bounce rate, and average session duration. Such questions offer crucial insights into what type of content over what channels and formats are likely to have greatest impact on any or key consumer segments. In addition, pattern data can also generate valuable customer insight that can be used to direct marketing expenditures as well. I can give you an example. An automotive seller, for instance, studied its consumers' purchasing and behavioral history and discovered that majority of high segment consumers were far more likely to rely on dealer distributors for product recommendations and less likely to be influenced by trade show exhibitions and marketing collaterals. This in turn helped the marketers to reallocate the budget. Therefore, business analytics enables managers to gain competitive intelligence on market conditions, target consumers more successfully, and optimize the processes as well. Improving internal processes with data. What this essentially means is through data analysis, business operators can get a clearer view of what they're doing efficiently, effectively, and inefficiently and ineffectively within an organization. When a problem is identified, professionals with an analytics background are capable of answering crucial questions such as what was the problem? What was the cause of the problem? Why did it happen? What will happen in the future? What is the best way forward? Data mining and analysis will help each one of us to get an answer to these questions and have confidence that we are moving forward with the best approach. Data is now capable of improving any business process, whether it's streamlining the communication in the supply chain or improving the quality and relevance of the offerings of an organization as well. Using data to drive performance. Well, while organizations spend considerable time analyzing consumer data and frontline monetization opportunities, it is equally imperative to focus on improving productivity and performance. Data and analytics can play a huge role in reducing inefficiency and streamlining business operations. For instance, reporting and analytical dashboards can identify data correlations and provide managers with detailed insights to perform cost valuations, peer benchmarking, and pricing segmentations. Similarly, using analytics to measure key performance metrics across areas such as operational excellence, product innovation, and workforce planning can reduce calculated insights to solve complex business scenarios as well. Business analytics can also improve the way organizations attract, retain, and develop talent. For example, a consulting group in Asia recently decided to undergo a major restructuring process. As a result, what they did was, it was very time-consuming and an intensive exercise. As a part of this initiative, the leadership team wanted to identify employees with high potential to succeed and gain a greater understanding into key indicators of performance. The analytics team began by streamlining data sets, data points such as professional history, education background, performance, age, and marital status, and demographics. After running the collated data through multiple regression models, the team was able to identify the employee profiles that had best chances of succeeding in particular roles. The research and analysis also suggested that the key roles that had the most impact on the company's overall growth. As a consequence, the company restructured around the key functional roles and talent groups as well. Another area where data analytics is providing a unique value proposition is supply chain. Supply chains are great places to look for strategic opportunities and advantages, partly because of their intricate nature and partly because of their significant contribution to the company's cost structure. By putting analytics to use, companies can not only identify hidden inefficiencies in existing structures in order to generate greater cost savings, but can also analyze significant supply chain investments and decisions by performing risk modeling and investment analysis and assessments. Managers can then deep dive into specific improvement opportunities such as inventory management, channel management, and procurement and logistics as well. Managing risk through analytics. Well, this is an important one. Organizations today, enterprises today are exposed to immense risk from structured data, such as databases, and unstructured data, such as websites, blogs, and social media channels. By leveraging risk analytics, companies can find themselves in a better position to quantify, measure, and predict risk. Managers need to see risk analytics as an enterprise-wide approach and should develop ways to pull data across different organization levels and functions into one central platform. By establishing a standard baseline for measuring and managing of risk, companies will be able to incorporate risk considerations into the core strategic decision-making process and predict the likely scenarios as well. Banks are leading their analytical space by discovering new ways to exploit transactional and behavioral consumer data. In fact, they are routinely going beyond the conventional structured information such as credit score reports and are looking out for unconventional sources of information such as loyalty, card consumer data, government information, etc. And by capturing such massive data sets, the banks are able to increase the accuracy, reach, and predictability of their credit risk models. From identifying high-risk payments before they are executed to predicting the likelihood of a customer defaulting a mortgage payment, risk models are leading the way by providing advanced and valuable insights. Therefore, companies should focus on enhancing and exploring operating business models. Advanced data models will make risky business decisions more uniform, enhance the ability of data, and provide greater agility and ability to address the unconventional data requirements. By becoming a more risk-intelligent enterprise, an organization will be more adept at dealing with uncertainty and strategic at decision-making as well. Asking the right questions. Well, the precise question your organization should ask depends on your best informed priorities. Clarity is essential. Examples of good questions include, how can we reduce cost? Or how can we increase revenue? Even better are questions that drill down further. How can we improve the productivity of each member of your team? How can we improve the quality of outcomes for patients? How can we radically speed our time to market for product development? Think about how can you align important functions and domains with your most important use cases. Iterate through to actual business examples and probe to where the value lies. In the real world of hard constraints on funds and time, analytical exercises rarely pay off for vaguer questions such as what patterns do the data points follow or show? That's a very broad question. One large financial company erred by embarking on just that sort of open-ended exercise, and it sought to collect as much data as possible and then see what turned up. When findings emerged that were marginally interesting but monetarily insignificant, the team refocused. With a strong C-suite support, it first refined a clear purpose statement aimed at reducing time in product development and then assigned a specific unit of measure to that purpose. Focus on the rate of customer adoption. A sharper focus helped the company introduce successful products for 2 market segments. Similarly, another organization I know plunged into data analytics by first creating a data lake as an example. It spent an inordinate amount of time, in fact, years, to make the data pristine, but invested hardly any thought in determining what the use cases should be. Management has since begun to clarify its most pressing issues, but the world is really patient. Had these organizations put the question horse before the data collection cart, they surely would have achieved an impact sooner, even if only portions of the data were ready to be mined. For example, a prominent automotive company focused immediately on the foundational question of how to improve its profits. It then bore down to recognize that the greatest opportunity would be to decrease the development time incurred in aligning its design and engineering functions. And once the enterprise had identified that key focus point, it proceeded to unlock deep insights from 10 years of research and development history, which resulted in remarkably improved development times and higher returns as well. Think really small and very big. sounds completely opposite, but I'll explain you what it is. Well, today organizations can still improve their performance and spur back into the lead. The pandemic has seen many big enterprises fall down, and they have not even started again. Let me tell you, easy fixes are unlikely, but companies can identify small points of difference to amplify and exploit. The impact of big data analytics is often manifested by thousands or more of incrementally small improvements. If an organization can atomize a single process into its smallest parts and implement advances where possible, the payoffs can be profound. And if an organization can systematically combine small improvements across bigger multiple processes, the payoff can be exponential. Just about everything businesses can do, they can also break down into component and parts as well. As an example, General Electric, GE, embeds sensors in its aircraft engines to track each part of their performance in real time, allowing for quicker adjustments and greatly reducing maintenance downtime as well. But if that sounds like the frontier of high tech, well, consider consumer packaged goods. That's much closer to our daily lives. I know of a leading CPG, consumer products good company, that sought to increase margins on one of its well-known breakfast brands. It deconstructed the entire manufacturing process into sequential increments and then, with advanced analytics, scrutinized each of these steps to see where it could unlock a value. In this case, the answer was found in the oven. Adjusting the baking temperature by a tiny fraction not only made the product tastier, but also made production less expensive. The proof was in the eating and an improved profit and loss. When a series of processes can be decoupled, analyzed, and resynced together in a system that is more universe than an atom, the results can be even more powerful. A large steel manufacturer, as an example, used various analytical techniques to study critical stages of its business model, including demand, planning and forecasting, procurement, and inventory management. In each process, it isolated critical value drivers and scaled back or eliminated previously undiscovered inefficiencies for savings of about 5 to 10%. Those gains, which rested on hundreds of small improvements, were made possible by data analytics, proliferated when the manufacturer was able to tie its processes together and transmit information across each stage in near real time. By rationalizing an end-to-end system, linking and demand planning all the way through inventory management, the manufacturer realized savings approaching 50%, hundreds of millions of dollars in all. And the last bit is making your output usable and beautiful. Well, whilst the best algorithms can work wonders, they can't speak for themselves. And it's important to understand. And they can't speak in the boardrooms as well. And data scientists too often fall short in articulating what they have done. That's hardly surprising. Companies hiring for technical roles today rightly prioritize quantitative expertise over presentation skills, but mind the gap, or face the consequences is what I would say. One world-class manufacturer I know employed a team that developed a brilliant algorithm for the options pricing for research and development projects. The data points were meticulously parsed, the analysis were intelligent and robust, and the answers were essentially correct. But the organization's decision makers found the end product somewhat complicated and eventually didn't use it because they couldn't just relate it. We're all humans after all, and appearances does matter. What you see is what you buy. And that's why a beautiful interface will get you a longer look than a detailed computation with an uneven personality as well. And that's why the elegant, intuitive usability of products like the iPhone is making its way into the enterprise as well. Analytics should be consumable, and best-in-class organizations now need to include designers on their core analytics teams as well. I've found that workers throughout an organization will respond better to interfaces that make key findings clear and draw users in it. My concluding remarks is perhaps the two lenses. In this volatile environment which is driven by disruption and innovation, business managers need to look through two lenses at the same time. The first lens is they have to identify high risk and rewarding opportunities, such as entering new markets and changing existing business models. Secondly, they have to obtain or they have to maintain their focus on including analytics into their core business decision-making process. By embedding data analytics into their core strategy, business managers can streamline internal business processes, identify unfolding consumer trends, interpret and monitor emerging risks, and build mechanisms for constant feedback and improvement. Driving analytical transformations will thereby enable companies to gain competitive edge and stay at the forefront of digital disruption. And to conclude, data and analytics is already shaking up multiple industries, and the effects will only become more pronounced as adoption reaches critical mass. And as machines gain unprecedented capabilities to solve problems and understand language, organizations that can harness these capabilities effectively will be able to create significant value and differentiate themselves, while the others will find themselves increasingly at a disadvantage. That brings me to an end to my topic today. Thank you so much for listening. It was a pleasure talking to you. Time for questions and answers. Thank you.
So thank you so much to Anand there for that excellent presentation. We do have time for one question for Anand. The question that has come through is, how do you generate value beyond cost using analytics?
Well, that's a great question, and apparently this is one question which haunts every functionary, the enterprise which has set up an analytics function. And the way I would look at it is focus on the benefit story. What is the benefit that the analytics deployment would actually be generating for your business? And the benefits can not always be quantitative. Look at the qualitative side of the benefits as well. Does the analytics team generate benefit which may perhaps enhance your net promoter score or customer satisfaction? Will it help you to make a decision which may actually reduce the risk exposure of your enterprise? That could be the second bit. Will this analytical solution help you to get more business? And I think also from an analytics standpoint, it's about the efficiency gains. How much effort will you be saving if you were to analyze data using an analytics team versus analyzing data while not having access to the analytics tool as well? Back to you, Megan.
Yeah, fantastic. Anish, thank you so much for those questions and for that excellent session. We are going to have to leave you there because of time, but thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Excellent. So time for our next session on data sharing, getting our house in order. We're very pleased to have with us Anand Ramamurthy, who is the Director and Head of Data Governance and Data Security at APJ Informatica. Please get your questions ready and submit them to our Q&A box, and he will answer them after the session.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are within Asia. My name is Anand Ramamurthy, and I'm the Director for Data Governance and Privacy at Informatica, looking after the region, based out of Melbourne. Thanks for joining me for this session. By the way, I chose this topic, obviously, because data sharing is a hot topic right now, and it's top of the mind for many. Before we get into the topic itself, I just happened to bump into this funny video. It's a YouTube video that was put together by the New York University back in 2012. The title of this video is Data Sharing and Management Snafu. And it runs for about just under 5 minutes, and there are 3 parts to it. So I don't want to run it and bore you for 5 minutes. You can take a look at it in leisure. It's a conversation that is happening between an oncologist, who's on the right-hand side, and the author of a research article. And the oncologist is keen to get the data behind the findings on that article. And the conversation goes in such a way that the oncologist asks for the data, and the author is saying that, I haven't labeled my boxes because I've moved the houses recently and I don't know where exactly my data is, which is somewhat similar to what we find in the data world, where many times we don't know where the data resides. The visibility is lacking. Similarly, once the data is produced after 7 or 8 months later, the oncologist is unable to view the data because of the format issue. And once they overcome the format issue, they had issues with the meaning of the fields and trying to understand what that data meant. And ultimately, the oncologist says to the author that it's of no use, let's not talk anymore because I can't use the data. This, even though we have come a long way, we've spent a lot of time and energy, we acknowledge the fact that data is a critical asset for the organization, we still see these issues in pockets, and sometimes for many, it is still an unsolved problem. Now, there's a lot of acknowledgement, as I said, in the last couple of years, data sharing being a hot topic. There are many ways at which the data sharing between businesses for product development, innovation, and better customer experience, these are seen as benefits. And of course, the challenges are plenty while sharing data, especially from our data privacy and trust concerns. Of course, in the recent years, we have put in a lot of effort looking at the external data sharing, things like Trusted Data Sharing Framework in Singapore, where PDPC and IMDA came together to put together this framework. Similarly, there's open banking, which is in Australia, it's a part of the consumer data rights regulation. Singapore has a strong open banking capability as well. And there are many other countries who are at various stages of that maturity when it comes to open banking. So of course, when it comes to the Australian one, the open data it's become more like an open data rather than just open banking, because it can go beyond banking after some time, right? And it started just with product banking and customer data sets and evolving into other data sets and other utility sector and so on. And open banking, I'm a beneficiary of that, and so would be many of us who are attending this session. It's things like simplifying payment experience. I moved banks, it was a lot smoother experience compared to what I did 5 years prior. Monetizing the analytics, the data coming out of the analytics, as well as a platform banking, which is more about the digital marketplace. My current bank has a marketplace where I can, currently I can get gift cards from other vendors. It could even be insurance for your home loan. The insurance itself cannot be provided by the bank, but they can introduce you to the insurance providers for home loans, as an example. So there are many ways to simplify that or better the user experience for banking customers, as an example. In addition to that, obviously, this snippet is from Gartner's Flip, Don't Share Data mantra, introduction to Gartner's Must Share Data, Unless Data Sharing Model, which was published last year in 2020 by Lydia Jones. And this resistance, I mean, what it says is resistance to data sharing obviously derails the alignment between the data and analytics strategies and the business outcomes. And of course, leaders, especially CDOs, should flip that outdated thinking about don't share data mantra to a must share data unless model. And these are some of the articles put together, and there are many more, but this is a great example of the emphasis on data sharing, right, and the benefits of it. And this will definitely accelerate. We all believe in the digital transformation. Many of us are going through that journey, but this data sharing, of course, with that collective approach would accelerate the digital business and transformation, right? Here's the example from an insurance sector. You're looking at the limited carriers in detecting organized crime because of siloed data. Whereas if you have that industry-centric initiative, then the members can come together and fight organized fraud networks, as example. And continuing on the Gartner's study, while I was researching, I happened to bump into this 5th annual CDAO survey from Gartner, which covers the importance of data sharing, not just externally, but also internally. This is why I want to pivot from, there's a lot of emphasis on external data sharing, and there's a lot of mind share for that. When people are talking about it, there's efforts that have gone in. But internally, we within the organizations have to deal with it. And I find it, now that's covered, we have covered the importance, while we have covered the importance of external data sharing, let's hone into the internal data sharing. We might acknowledge that internal data sharing is equally important for the teams to be effective. And it says that the teams are 3 times more likely to generate measurable benefits from exchange of data assets with business partners or within various departments. Now, drilling into internal data sharing and roadblocks around it, right? This is also coming from this CDAO survey from Gartner. For effective data sharing, the top roadblocks are definitely the data management and governance, stakeholder resistance, lack of access to data, poor data quality, and so on, lack of trust in data source, which is where it's coming from and what's being done to it. Now, it also says successful digital businesses require seamless data access and data sharing across the entire organization. However, many organizations, environments being designed specifically not to share data. And that's been the thought process or the mindset that we had in the past, because inherently there is lack of trust. Now, this is the article from McKinsey that inspired the title of my talk today, right? How to unlock the value of data. And this talks about a few steps that we need to take. And many of you have already gone through this journey, having a data strategy and so on, and acknowledging that data governance is a key enabler. And there might be some who will be looking at ways to do it, but given its banking and financial services, the audience that we have today, most of our organizations are matured enough and we have been tackling this problem for some time. But have we handled the problem well? It's still a work in progress. So the reason why I wanted to delve into the internal data sharing is, it is so critical. I mean, I've been hearing a lot of customers talk about data being critical, but at the end of the day, there's not enough buy-in from the business to invest in some of these capabilities. So to increase the velocity of change from the market volatility and acceleration of digital transformation, it requires faster, broader, and easier data sharing and use. And this is coming from, again, from the CDOs, what they have to say, what's top of the mind for them, right? About hundreds of CDOs when we interviewed during the COVID-19 pandemic, that means last year, they had consistently, in our conversation, said that they're supporting their business with real-time operational analysis. Then, of course, in that 66%, in fact, if I'm looking at it, 69% of the respondents want to empower more data-driven decisions made by the frontline workers, right? So there's a high number of them who wants those frontline workers to make those data-driven decisions, in the process providing better customer experience. Similarly, you had when it comes to scenario modeling and analysis, about 77% of the respondents said access to meaningful and quality data is a significant issue. I don't know how things are with each of you. I would assume, even though we've embarked on this journey, there will still be plenty of these challenges still existing. And then finally, these traditional daily and weekly forecasting and planning cycles, the CFOs, 65% of them anticipate that more use of rolling forecasts in 2021 and beyond. So there's a lot of emphasis, and this is top of the mind for them. So let's understand what are the key challenges when it comes to internal data sharing. So challenges are this siloed approach, right? We as teams are siloed. The way we work has been siloed for quite a long time. And even though we acknowledge the fact that things need to be shared internally, we would have had some little success in it. There's still challenges that we see. One of the examples of the challenge that it came from a non-FSI sector, especially in the public sector, where one of the customers told me last year when I met them that it's a treasury is responsible for dispersing the funds to those agencies who are applying for a particular project. And the Parliament might approve that, and then the Treasury disperses the funds. But during the year, due to various reasons, including COVID, as of last year, creates a budget hole. And in the process, you'll have to recover that money from these agencies which are unused. And there's a collection team who's responsible to recover that money. However, in order for their job to be effective, they need to understand the revenue information. And the revenue team cannot share the data that they have because of all sensitivity reasons. And this internal lack of data sharing and this silo leads to inefficiencies, as in this case, right? And you will have similar examples within your organization. And how do we help our customers in the process and provide a better service? That lack of internal data sharing can cause many of these issues. Drilling down further into those challenges, I mean, if you were to bear it down, obviously discoverability of those data assets becomes a key. That is a foundational capability. And then understanding that data and its context from a business perspective is also equally key. And then, of course, I mean, accessing the data from where it is and moving it across or keeping it where it is. There are many different thought processes. We have tried different aspects of it. Then comes a trust. Trust in whether it is fit for use. Which are the other users who are telling me I don't even know how the other users are using it? Can I trust this data? I have no idea. I'm on my own, right? Then, of course, privacy becomes a very critical aspect when it comes to sharing data, which is most of the time privacy becomes a key barrier when it comes to sharing data internally. And then finally, if you want to consume so that the users, the consumers of the data can consume it for whatever end goal that they're looking for, whether it is bringing in insights, business insights, or doing their day-to-day job, whatever it might be, bringing in that efficiency, consumption becomes a key outcome, right? Just highlighting the value of visibility and understanding, which is a foundational requirement when it comes to internal data sharing. I just want to put it from a data privacy lens. This is from a cost of insider thread. There's a Ponemon Institute produced this findings last year, I think late last year. Majority of the data breaches have insider thread being the reason for it. And within that, 62% of those insider threats have been due to negligent employee or contractor. So this negligence is more because of lack of understanding and lack of visibility into what this data set means and what is it used for. And if we can heighten that visibility and understanding, we will be in a lot better place in addressing some of these privacy risks. Now, Informatica being a software provider, as you would have seen from technology is one of the key challenges, we've been investing heavily in providing that foundational capabilities like data catalog and data governance to discover and understand, then data quality, as well as the data catalog and governance to provide the trust aspect of it, as well as data privacy capabilities and data protection capabilities to protect the data. Ultimately, opening it up for data consumers to come through a data marketplace, to have a dialogue with the data owners and consume the data as and when needed. The biggest challenge with the lack of visibility is we don't know what data is there. We end up creating duplicate data assets within the organization that further heightens the risk around privacy as well as the trust itself. So the ability for us to, by providing that visibility, there is an ability for the data consumers to have a dialogue with the data custodians, whether it's owner or stakeholder, whoever it might be, having that dialogue so that both understand why someone is saying that this data cannot be accessed and make a case for that to be accessed for the right purpose. And that is what a solution like Marketplace would enable organizations to do. Here's an example of a data sharing use case. Again, it's in a public sector. The Public Works Department, this was late last year, they started off as a information asset registry use case, which was held in an Excel spreadsheet, and they wanted to use a reusable, centralized, metadata-driven platform, and they replicated it into the Marketplace and the governance solution or the metadata solution. But they very soon realized, that was a use case because prior to that in an Excel spreadsheet, it was getting updated once and no one really uses it. By having it in a centralized location, the users are able to constantly update the information assets as well as consume them on a more regular basis. But very soon they realized with COVID data sets that the Public Works Department was owning, they said, okay, I have information about those vulnerable citizens who are 65 plus, or those who have been quarantined, or those who have been tested positive, and many more of these data sets. How can I share this data with other departments like Department of Health, who are responsible for making sure that they're providing those services to the community and they're allocating the resources at the right time to the right place? Without this visibility, they would have gone ahead and looked for their own data sets, which could be, you cannot trust the data because they don't know the source, whether they got it from the right source or not. There could be inconsistencies, and in the process, the services that they offer might be less efficient, and it will have an impact in the society. So this enables for them to collaborate, and in the process, Treasury Department can come in and say that, okay, we have information coming from banks that we can collect, and that can be shared so that income status of these people who are affected can also be brought in to provide whatever services that needs to be offered. So in summary, this approach allows for the data consumers to have visibility into data assets within their organization, allowing for a dialogue to happen between the consumer and the data custodian or the data owner, creating an opportunity for data, as in unlocking the value of data. With that, thank you so much. I'll take some questions at this stage.
Excellent. Thank you so much for such a detailed presentation. We do have time for some questions. Welcome, Anand. Thank you so much. The first question that has come through is, do you see customers adopting capabilities that enable internal data sharing in our region?
Thanks, Ruben. You can hear me well, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this question. Definitely, yes. Especially in the banking and financial service industry, right? There's absolutely efforts that are there in establishing those fundamental capabilities for data sharing, like data governance and data cataloging and so on, as well as data privacy. However, what I'm seeing, most of these capabilities are stood up more from a regulatory compliance perspective. That's been the primary driver for the financial service industry. Even though there's acknowledgement that there's a need for such capabilities beyond these regulatory compliance, I still see struggle within organizations to articulate the value, right? The business value beyond those compliance needs, which is what I'm getting to hear from customers. I could be wrong, and there might be customers who have been successful in going beyond that. I I think there's a greater, there's a need for greater awareness, right, at the executive level about the value of such capabilities, especially when we are talking about data sharing externally. How can we leverage that for internal data sharing as well? In the process, we are increasing the, what you call, data visibility, data literacy, and data agility.
Excellent. Great. Another question that's come through is, what do you think is still lacking when it comes to internal data sharing?
Lacking. Okay. Let me try to answer this way. As I said, the acknowledgement is there. There's great efforts that have gone into establishing the value of data within organizations. I mean, everyone knows data is the most critical asset, right? The biggest challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is the data privacy concerns. And many of the data assets that are there, which are the true value that is sitting within the organization, it's not being made visible because of the data privacy concerns. The privacy teams would say, I mean, this is sensitive, critical data. No one can have access, or only select few can have access. Through the talk track I had, I was talking about the data marketplace. I was mentioning about that need for the dialogue that needs to happen between the consumers of the data and the custodians, so that the custodians can understand what is the purpose of use, why is the consumer asking for such data, what are they going to use it for, how long are they going to use it for. That dialogue never happens when you have this, the wall that is put between the data asset that is sitting on one side and the consumers looking to consume it, right? So, and the key is about that, having the dialogue that needs to be made to happen, right? So having that awareness and also ability to say that, okay, if there's no harm in providing the visibility to what data is there, that will open up more opportunities to secure the data even more. So as I mentioned earlier about the insider threat, and 62% of that is due to negligence of people not knowing what that data asset is for. No one is corrupt by nature. It's just more of lack of understanding leads to all kinds of issues.
Excellent.
That's one.
Yeah, that's answered the question. Wonderful. Anand, thank you so much for being with us and for answering those questions. This is such an excellent presentation. If anybody does have further follow-up questions, they can find you on LinkedIn, I'm sure.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks.
That's great. So that was Anand Ramamurthy, who's the Director of Head of Data Governance and Data Security at APJ at Informatica. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Robin. Take care.
Excellent. Now that brings us to our panel discussion for this afternoon on the topic of successfully valuing and monetizing your data assets. We are so lucky to have with us and to welcome to our panel our moderator, Huaxing Chen, who is the Business Insights and Analytics Sector Solution Group for United Overseas Bank. We have Celine Hesat-Lecotonek, who is the Chief Data Innovation Officer for the Bank of Singapore, who is Head of Data, I beg your pardon, at Sing Bank. We are so pleased to have all of you with us, and I believe you're all coming on the line. And without further ado, I am going to hand you over to your host, who has a mask on at the moment, Huaxing Chen from United Overseas Bank. Thank you so much.
Hello, Hello, thank you very much, Shubham, for the introduction. For everybody who want to recognize my true face, I don't mind to take away the mask for a short while. Anyway, thank you very much. I think still be near to your laptop, your computing devices during the lunch hour in Singapore, Malaysia. I think we're going to spend the next 13 exciting minutes with all of you. We do have, as introduced by Shubham, that two distinguished panelists. One is Celine. Let me briefly introduce her to you, right? She's currently looking after the data strategy and innovations in the Bank of Singapore, which is a private bank in the Asia Pacific regions, right? But before that, she also looked after a very, very big, regional insurers called AXA, right? She looked after the data strategy there as well, right? The other one is Dr. Geraldine Wang. I think I know her for a while. Currently, she looked after the data strategies in the new joint venture between Grab and Centel. Prior to that, she looked after teams of data analytics in Centel. right? I'm pretty sure as of now you probably have a round of applause, even though that we can't hear. Okay. Today we're going to spend, I think, the next 30 to 45 minutes. Hopefully you like this, right? To talk about how do we value and monetize the data asset in a company. We'll not restrict ourselves actually just to bank and financial industries. Obviously, you know, the other two panelists come from insurance, telcos, and myself also come from, credit cards, casino type of business, right? So we're going to talk a bit more cross-industry stuff, right? And we all know that I think the world as of now is much more connected compared to 50 years ago, right? Despite there's some recent setback in the globalizations, but I will be thinking the long term is that we'll become more connected, right? The world is keep on finding a way to do business in a more cost-effective and more efficient manners. And data being one of the most important catalysts is not dispensable, right? So as I mentioned, we're going to find a way to talk about how do we find data in organization, both internal and external. Also, how do we find a way to translate data into impact and values, right? Without much ado, I think we'd like to basically pose the first question to maybe to Salim first, right? Maybe Salim can share with us during your last maybe a few years in the banking and insurance industry, right? What type of data do you have both internal and external?
Well, I think we're using, internal data. We have a lot of transaction data. When it comes to insurance, it's more related to policy, claims, all those type of internal data that are helping us to derive analytic and insight from it. I would say that in banking, we're using much more external data. I mean, we do use some, especially when it comes to demographic data or understanding where our policy holders are located on the insurance field, but by definition, banking industry is using a lot of external market data. You know, all the Bloomberg, Refinitiv, Morningstars, all the rating agency, S&P, Moody's, are some of the common external data that we're using on a regular basis to be able to evaluate our product, to be able to rate the risk profile of our product, or more recently the ESG rating of our product, so how sustainable the financial instrument that we are providing to our customer are rated. And more also we're looking for on the digital marketing side, or how can we use the data available from the digital social media, for example, especially when it comes to customer that are actually quite well present on the internet. And most recently we've been using those technology for anti-money laundering and know your customer type of activity that is usually regular in bank. So all the monitoring of the politically exposed person that we have in the portfolio, for example, in order to answer some questions from the regulators. So pretty much this is what we're using in terms of internal and external data.
I see. Thank you, Salim. Before I pass the same question to Dr. Geraldine, I would like to ask you a follow-up questions, right? Just as you mentioned in the banking industry and insurance industry, you have so many different type of data, right? I'm just curious, in terms of data velocity, volumes, and varieties, which industry do you think is slightly more complicated? Do you want to give some comments or come back?
Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult because Bank of Singapore is a private bank, right? So we don't have much data. We don't do big data per se. What we try to do is smart data. Is how can we use our data in an efficient manner to drive business decision or to be able to recommend the right product to our customer. But our Bank of Singapore, for the people who are listening to us, is the private banking arm from OCBC Bank. So we're only addressing a market of ultra high net worth customer. So it's about 5 million to a bank account in Bank of Singapore. So it can only goes up. So the number, I would say that, it's very different when you look at private banking vs retail banking, because private banking is a kind of wealth management activity, right? Like our customer have many other banks, and we are one of the many banks that they do have, and we're aware of that, right? And they're transacting with us for wealth management purpose in order to grow their wealth, to transmit their wealth, to prepare for, their children. But it's a bit different if you look at the amount of data that a retail bank is actually collecting, because the retail bank has all the information regarding your spending. They know where you're living, they know how much electricity you're using, they know if you have children, they know if you're going to go and see the doctor, because they have all the record of those transactions available from your credit card or your bank account, So they have much more knowledge. A retail bank have much more knowledge about the behavior of their customer, looking at their transaction, than what we can have in a private banking space, where we're only looking pretty much at how do we grow wealth for our customer. But which means that at the end of the day, we don't know our customers that much. We might not know how many kids they have. I mean, we know some of the beneficiary of our trust, for those who have trust open with us, but we don't have that much information about the behavior of our customer and what do they like, in order to be able to recommend them, better products. So that's a bit the difference when you look at wealth management, private banking, and then retail banking that has much more internal data that are available to do better product recommendation, for example.
I see. Thank you very much, Salim, for sharing with us the insightful comments. I think I'm pretty sure, including myself, that we didn't really see the difference between the two, right? Excellent, I think. Yeah. Now I would like to pass the same question to Dr. Geraldine, right? What type of data do you have seen or use internally, both externally, not just for your current role, but also your previous role in the telco? Do you like to give a few comments? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Celine has covered broadly and extensively on the bank and insurance side of things. But so I thought I'll give a view of the telco. And of course, I think a lot of people are familiar with what kind of telco data is used. I think I wanted to draw an example of a success story from Spain, Telefonica, and some of their data division that they have through Blue, right? And it's a separate company that actually provides solutions for crowd analytics with mobility patterns and audience insights for marketing and advertising purposes. And this is a one sense of how they do monetization as well. And I believe it's very easy to see that these are some of the data points that a telco would collect. If you want to even connect to any of your services or send messages, this is a bare minimum capability that the telco should provide, right? In terms of external data, I believe we don't really use as much as we do, but it's more in terms of benchmarking. And if you think about market research companies for products, for testing, for quantitative, qualitative surveys, these are some of the potential external data that we would leverage on as well.
I see. Thank you, Geraldine, for the comments as well. I think as a moderator, I would like to share a little bit as well, right? I think just now Salim mentioned about the differences between the private banking type of data and the consumer banking type of data, right? That I would like to share a bit more, right? Bank have another important business component, which is corporate banking. Sometimes we also see wholesale banks, right? In the wholesale banking, our primary customer segments essentially are corporations, right? A company. Now, obviously, you know that the number of companies in any country probably will be lesser than the number of populations, right? So in Singapore space, I think we probably have a 4 or 5 million of the population, assuming each of them have 1 to 2 accounts, right? Easily we can have more than 10 million plus of account opening in the retail banking sections. Whereas in the wholesale side, if you're careful enough that you have been browsed through the ACRA data, you know that the sizable company in Singapore space is in terms of a few 10,000s, right? So right away, the scale will be different. And the type of data and the type of services and products that wholesale banking clients need to consume from the bank side will be drastically different from the retail side. In the retail side, usually people talk about what? Open accounts, get credit cards, car loans, property loans, right? In the wholesale side, it's a lot more, right? Sometimes when they need to engage the intention of trade business, right, they need to do something like LC, the documented trade, or it can be open accounts, right, etc. I'm not further going into details, right? If you're key, I think you probably have an offline chat. So the type of data in the wholesale space, not just in terms of volume, will be comparably lesser compared to retail side, but in terms of frequency, you'll be less as well. Imagine as an individual, how often do you make a transactions, right? Probably every couple of days, you're going to use your credit card to do something like that. Whereas in the wholesale space, most of the transaction you're going to see either will be loan, right? You borrow for overseas expansion or for working capital purpose, or it's for cross-border trade business. So the frequency side relatively will be on the low side, but the per ticket size will be much, much bigger compared to the numbers you see in the retail side. So hopefully, I think three of us adding together can show you some light. I think what are key differences in terms of both internal and external data combined with the business segments I think we're talking about, right? So let's move to the next, I think, question. We'll be keen to understand a bit more from Dr. Geraldine, right? Just now you present that in the telco space, there are different type of footfall data, etc. But how do you use them? Do you use them as a part of your business process and you make some reporting for the key decision makers? Or do you use them for analytics actually to find better way to monetize, not to monetize, to find insights so that you can improve the efficiency, find better way actually to acquire the clients, etc. Or use both? Maybe do you want to elaborate a bit more? How do you use this data for your business process and etc.?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question, by the way. So maybe I'll draw it up a bit to a higher level and then share it from a broader perspective instead of just the telco data, but just data as potentially useful and its applications internally. I think all of us would first actually look internally and in-house to see, you know, how's the data useful for whichever use case that we have within the bank or within the telco or the company that we work with. And the reason we do that is one, to enhance our current business, right, cost savings and all that. But also with that, it actually generates or further generates new data points for us. And that could be potentially useful for us as well for future use cases. And so a lot of what we have been doing with leveraging some of the data points is, of course, customer being the centricity of it all, being able to see what are the best products, recommendations, next best action type of activity that we would like to recommend to the customers, right? And then on the flip side, you also want to see what the cost savings are, what are the cost savings measures that you could take on operational use cases, on some of the risk assessment type of use cases as well. If you look at externally, then there are interesting use cases whereby I think insurance companies also partner a lot with the telcos on how they can do smarter recommendations and lead generations through their partnerships as well. And I feel like this is almost like the next wave of partnerships between data partners as well.
Okay, before I pose the question, same question to Celine, I just want to, again, I think ask a follow-up questions, right? Do you see any challenges while you're trying to do some of those you mentioned, right? In terms of, for example, the data sharings, data qualities, or do you have the right talents that you want to employ to get things done?
I think there was a question that was posed to Anand previously on his call as well about the challenges on data sharing, and I do agree that there could be a lack of consistency these days and standards of what definitions and quality of the data we have, or even sometimes a repository of what we have. Often we don't even take stock of what we have internally to be able to make full use of the data assets that we actually have. And this is, to me, one of the big challenge that I think most organizations would face. Having the lack of a metadata, for example, lack of a data lineage, the quality, etc., right? And then the next thing is also about the access controls and who is able to access what, and for what purpose are they using it for. I think all of this has to be nailed down when effective data sharing is brought across. And then the last thing that people should also record is how do they value the data assets being used in all of the use cases in the data sharing within the organization, external organization. How do we effectively value that data assets that are being used as well? I think there should be some standardized matrix of sorts that could be shared around the organization.
Thank you. Excellent point, Dr. Geraldine. I share a lot of pain points, I think, as you, right? So I pose the same question to Celine, that first of all, how do you use the data I think you share with all of us just now for your core business process, for analytics, for reporting, and what are the challenges you have encountered to value and monetize all those data, both internally as well as externally?
Well, I think Geraldine said it well already, right? Usually when it comes to data, you've got like two types of use cases. You have those that will be impacting your top line. How can I grow my business? Upsell, cross-sell, retention of customer, next best offer, product recommendation, whatever you want, more broad back from the digital marketing and then, targeted advertising, type of use cases. The second part is really about how do you better manage your risk? How do you better manage your operational process? For example, how am I able to reduce through developing, a model or alert system using data, my activity linked to, anti-money laundering, for example, or just, risk management, where am I from my credit line, from my margin call, and altogether, you can look as well as, in terms of data, we're using also as a private bank, we're using also a lot of data coming from the other investment bank that we are partnering with, right? Because Bank of Singapore is actually distributing products that are manufactured by other banks. And so for all of those banks who are receiving, for example, like product, catalog or product fact sheet, that are about 70 pages, a PDF document that one of the analysts need to read through, in order to find the right ratio, the frequency of, the bond payment, for example. And all of this, can be automated through usage of natural language processing. So this is also one of, we have a lot of NLP use cases where we're implementing NLP within the organization in order to streamline some kind of, activities that were done manually before, with an eyeballing type of methodology. That now we can automate most of those and then derive automatically ratios for the business. So it increased the efficiency drastically at the end of the day when you're removing some repetitive manual tasks through process automation and intelligent process automation. So augmented with NLP or machine learning, depending on the use case at the end of the day. But I would say that one of the best, one of the most important things in data is that it helps the management to take the right decision, right, at the right time, informed decision regarding where the business is. We used to be in a world where, gut feeling we're okay to take decision, but now people want to be able to rely on data. And data helps you to first identify issue, right? And then after to track the remediation of it, and to track also the strategy. How is the strategy, performing against what we had planned? So this is what data analytics brings a lot as well to the management. It brings more agility because with data, it brings transparency within the organization by the data, the dashboard being accessible by the rest of the organization. So everyone is aware of how is our business doing, what are the problems of the organization, and then you can align the strategy. You can be more reactive in pivoting your strategy in order to grow your business or to save your business, as it was the case for the COVID-19 year, where everybody was looking at, okay, what are the data telling? Because we don't know what to do. So let's take micro action and then see how that works. Let's take micro action on the work from home strategy, for example. A lot of the company were not ready to work from home. So data here brought over transparency, and you're not able to solve any problem that you're not able to track, right? So first, thanks to data, you discover issue, and then after you're able to track the progress of the remediation of those issues, right? So I think this is one of the things that is always difficult to quantify, but by bringing transparency and insight, you bring agility to the organization at the end of the day. So that's one of the most important things. You are empowering as well all the people, because everybody has the same access to information. Except some very strictly confidential use cases, but most of them is really about how do I democratize my access to data and to insight to the rest of the organization. So everyone at their level, should that be from top management to executives to operational people, can take the right decision based on data. And I think that's also one of the main actual use case that is very difficult to quantify. In terms of blockers, I think, for me, data is one thing, doing analytics is one thing, but the question is how do you embed data and analytics into your day-to-day decision making and process improvement. Because wisdom and what is your roadmap as well on the HR side in order to upskill your people and to forecast the type of job that will be automated and the type of job that will be needed in the future. I'll give you a very simple example. In this NLP use cases, for example, where someone was actually screening, eyeballing all the necessary information, doing, copy paste or Control F, whatever you want, in order to find the right information on this 70 pages document that he received daily, right? This job is being automated, right? Thanks to natural language processing and then a machine learning model that will generate an output ratio naturally behind. So the job will be automated, but the tasks are being automated, but the job does not disappear. The job is changing. The job is transforming. Now this person needs to help the data scientist first to label all the document and then to look at the accuracy and then to look at exception handling. A model is never accurate at 100%. So you always have exception where you will need human, and especially in complex cases where you will need human to actually look at what happened and then interpret it, right, to be able to take a human decision. So the jobs are here to remain. It's just that our people need to upskill and their tasks are changing. Okay, they're here about accuracy model monitoring and then improvement and then process improvement as well on the back end, because you don't implement machine learning model on paper-based process, right? So you need to tend to digitalize the whole process end to end as well up to the consumer of the data. So I think this is one of the main challenge that as any digitization effort, implementation of AI is you need to get it end to end. There's no way that you can still do manual process in between. So you need to have an overall holistic approach of how do you actually implement AI within your organization. And I think that's the toughest part, because everybody needs to be made accountable for that, right? It's not only the data team, it's not only the data scientists. It should first come from the people of the business. And for this, they need to increase their own understanding of data.
I just wanted to add. Sorry, I just want to add on your point about the understanding of data. And I draw an example from, how we are made on a yearly basis with companies to go through security videos and privacy videos, right? I feel like there's a lack of data awareness and literacy within organization, and some form of education program should be put in place within companies, and there could be a yearly refresher course of sorts, like what we do with cybersecurity and risk and all that, right? That we have to go through as part of our company, what do you call it, milestones. So things like that, I feel should be in place. And it would be interesting to see how companies adopt it moving forward. So
I think this is what we have now, and this is what you can see in bank, like on the data management and data quality side. So because thanks to some regulation like BCBS 239 or Basel 3, like bank had to look at their data quality and data lineage and, start to set up glossary and stuff. So as part of this, we have a yearly compulsory training on data management and the 8th dimension of data quality. But we are now trying to kind of raise the level of the organization by also including certification, external certification, as well as mandatory, YouTube or Coursera training that people need to be doing, on top of that, and exchanging with other leaders. But I do definitely agree with you. It's very important to raise the data literacy of the overall organization from top to bottom, because otherwise nothing will be able to change until people understand what is at stake.
Yep. Excellent point. Thank you very much. I think both was the links and Jordan's. Obviously, that I think one of the key takeaway from the challenges shared by both of you is that data quality, the right process, the business involvement are the key actually to ensure that essentially you have a successful data journey, analytics journey, and to translate the data into insights, into dollars and cents, right? Just maybe I think just want to ask the further question for Celine, right? In the private banking side, do you foresee or do you experience any so-called peculiar challenges that you don't see in some other industries? Just now you mentioned one point that maybe in the private banking sectors, right, you don't really know the customer as well as the one in the consumer banking sectors. Do you foresee any other challenges that is so unique to the sector itself?
No, I think that every industry have their own challenges, right? Like, I wouldn't say that we don't know our customer. We know our customer. I used to work in an industry like car manufacturing, where you actually don't know who our customer. You know who is the guy who bought the car, but you don't know if it has been, sold to someone else. And so in car manufacturing, you actually don't know who is your customer. Here, it's more about the type of behavioral data that you are able to collect or not. So in the private banking sector, we don't collect as much behavioral data as in the retail banking sector. I think one of the things which is more related to banking, because it's a highly regulated industry, right? It's also the level of maturity of the regulators, because the regulators are actually asking for a lot of reports, data points for them to be able to supervise the banking industry. And you need to have the regulators that are also moving towards the use of new technology and new methods. This will drive actually the transformation of the overall banking industry. One of the main pain points, I would say, is regarding the adoption of new technology, and especially when it comes to cloud technology that can offer us a lot of agility as well as on-demand analytic services. Today, within the banking sector, the mindset have always been more to kind of try to develop everything internally, because it's so complicated to outsource, and then you need to manage your risk, and then you need to prove to the regulator how you're managing your technology risk. So all of this is so kind of painful that at the end of the day, when it comes to outsourcing the storage of your data onto a public cloud platform, it becomes like huge topic. And Sam, it's a question of awareness and maturity of all the people within the organization. But I think that particularly, financial industry is quite late on public cloud adoption because of those, mindset and regulation principle and fear, of taking risk when it comes to changing tech stack.
I see. Thank you very much, I think, Celine, for the very interesting and insightful sharings, right? In the interest of time, I think let me ask the last question to both of you, right? Imagine the next maybe 3 to 5 years, because I ask this question because both of you basically are the chief executives in your own organization running the data strategies, right? I just want to ask you, right, in view of those potential challenges, right, both internal and external, and plus the regulations, pressures, etc., right? What do you think are the top maybe 1 or 2 things for you to think of to push the existing data boundaries and aim for better ROIs? Maybe I think I'll go to Dr. Geraldine first this time around.
That's a really challenging question about.
We know, that's why we asked both of you, right?
I would like to see a more cohesive collaboration, and now we do have open banking and the open banking data as well, and the SG Index. So the access to data in banking would be more open, and the collaboration could be stronger. In terms of, I would like to see, I'm looking actually more towards collaborations between co-industry or parallel industries, cross-industries, I would say, or cross-verticals, in actually providing more customer centricity products. Because as you know, we all bring different strengths to the table from different industries. All the data assets would mean different things for the customer. And I think having this almost like a customer 360 view of a customer would actually really push the envelope. Secondly, is about, I would like to see a better building of the right culture in terms of how we do data sharing or monetization of data. Because with the right culture or with the right strategy, I think it helps in setting the backdrop for monetization and data awareness within the organization as well.
Okay, great. I think same question to you, Celine, that what is your vision for data strategy to push the data ROI to the different levels for the next maybe 3 to 5 years in your vision?
Now, I do agree with Geraldine on the cross-industry partnership. I mean, for me, this is definitely the next step, and we have seen this happening in other industries, right? So that's going to come up for banking as well, hopefully, in order to be able to, again, be more customer-centric and propose the right product at the right time to our customer, right? Should there be from the both partner side. I hope as well for data to really improve, I would say, effective risk monitoring. There are too many. The risk culture in financial services is really about setting up a word policy, and then after getting some risk acceptance or blah blah blah. And it's just, I see cybersecurity being done on Excel sheet, and that's not how you do it in 2020, to be honest. So I would really look at how do AI help us to better protect our data, ensure, strengthen cybersecurity, as well as real-time monitoring of risk.
Thank you, Celine, for both of you. Right, these are 2 data points for industry leaders. Right, you guys take another 3 to 5 years to validate that data point to see how accurate it is. Right. Now let's open the ground, I think, for questions from the general audience. Maybe we still have time, maybe to take 1 or 2 questions. Any questions from the ground? I really want to ask a few more, but I think I should pass the opportunity to the general ground. Yeah.
Huashing, feel free to ask questions. Yeah. We don't have any currently waiting, so feel free to shoot with your questions.
Sure, no problem. Okay, let me ask some interesting questions, right? I mean, we know that, Geraldine, essentially that you change from traditional industry to a new industry, right? Do you think that in Singapore space, right, we have enough data analytics talent supplies that is to power the needs in various type of business?
Well, I feel data analytics here. Okay, I'm going to go and start with a data analytics definition of what we mean by data analytics. And I think for different industries, the criteria for data analytics are vastly different from, say, the banking, telco versus your e-commerce. And because there's a range of it, I feel like there is a lack of streamlining of what kind of talent is required for what purposes. Often we hire people who could be too overqualified for the work that we need, or underqualified for the work that we need. So I don't feel like there is a lack of talent per se. I think it's the lack of appropriate talent for what the business needs. And with that, you really need the right people, or the right frameworks in place, people, processes, to actually find that person or find that candidate, and in order to find that gem within that pile of candidates that you have, right? So that's been my experience, at least. Celine probably want to chip in.
Yes,
please. Yeah.
I mean, the lack of talent is one thing, but I do really believe about upskilling, right? I do believe that it's the role of an organization today to be able to upskill all of their people when it comes to data and data literacy. Because, when you look at banking, for example, like we already have product analysts, risk analysts, financial analysts, they are all analysts. They have all been working with data for like ages and years. It's just that, the tool that they're using, the models that they're using might not be really up to date, right? So how about we try to, teach those people about, using Python instead of VBA, and just moving them to, explaining them, what can machine learning do. And I do really believe that we need to spend much more time on the upskilling of our existing workforce, rather than only trying to look outside for new talent. I mean, you always need new talent, but at the end of the day, there is a shortage of talent in the region and in Singapore specifically. So, and as Geraldine mentioned, we have a tendency to hire overqualified people that just can't stand it. At the end of the day, you can't come from an e-commerce and then move into a banking industry. There is a real cultural shock. So what about we do the contrary and we just upskill the people that have the banking industry knowledge into becoming, data analysts and maybe in the future scientists. With all the AutoML platforms that are available on the market, everybody can be a citizen data scientist nowadays. So that's more mobility.
Thank you very much, Celine. I think it's an immense pleasure to host both of you. I think I do learn a lot, especially I think when you comment about insurance, telcos, as well as private banks. Really hope, I think, to connect with both of you in the long run. I think audience, I'm pretty sure that if you guys want to approach our 2 distinguished, I think, panelists, feel free to approach them through LinkedIn, through other channels. Thank you very much for your time. I think we'll not stop you from your lunch anymore.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks so much to the panel. We had just Huashing Chen from UOB, Celine Hazat Lekotonek from Bank of Singapore, and Dr. Geraldine Wong from Grab Digital. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us. And that takes us to our second last presentation of the day. We have with us Monique Hessling, who's the Managing Director of Insurance and Data Governance from Cloudera, who's tackling the topic of sustainable data governance, bridging business and IT. Excellent. Thank you so much, Monique, for that excellent session. We do have a few minutes for questions if anyone wants to submit them into the Q&A box now. We've had some questions come through for Monique, and one of them is, can you give some examples of how to improve the cooperation between business and IT?
Yeah, it's an old one, right? It's one that we have been talking about for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Keeps coming back. And you know, truly, a while ago, if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said, and I was on the business side, IT seems to believe we don't understand it. Nowadays, I truly think it is much better than it ever has been. And I truly believe that the biggest part is have people coexist and have people work closely together so that they understand the needs of the other party, if we want to use that term. Still regularly, I hear IT folks working in a vacuum and never talk to the business about their needs and their use cases, or I see business folks that throw use cases, you know, over the wall into IT and don't really care what they truly are asking IT to do. So I think, you know, it sounds maybe a little bit fluffy, but I think a lot of normal human behavior and understanding comes a long way.
Yeah, great. Another question that comes through is, how important is perfect data quality for data governance?
Yeah, normally when companies start on data governance, they truly work under the understanding that everything needs to be perfect. And first of all, that's not going to happen, especially in operational or real-time or near-time environments. And secondly, it's not necessary. So what we always suggest, what I suggest to especially our FSI customers is categorize your data in buckets. And there is a certain type of data that needs to be perfect or close to perfect. Prime example, in life insurance, being dead or alive, that's a very critical thing, right? But there's also data that you can live with a couple of percent points of inaccuracies, address, zip codes. You know, they're probably not ever going to be 100% perfect at point in time. So categorize your data in different buckets and define for each bucket how perfect it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I've had another question come through. Why is data lineage so important?
Yeah. Data on the edge means actually that you do calculations and analytics at the point where the data is being used and created, quite often in a streaming or in a real time or in an Internet of Things kind of environment. It is important for two reasons. One is that the technology to actually analyze the data at that location is relatively new. So it wasn't that long ago that we truly couldn't really easily or relatively inexpensive analyze data from IoT devices or sensors. To give an example, you think financial services, the examples tend to be more around people, location, geo, health information, Fitbit kind of stuff, right? Apple Watches, those kind of things. The other reason is that more and more, even financial services companies are starting to see value in that near-time or real-time sensor-driven data. So there is a demand that we create as an industry to analyze that data better, right? We're getting more and more used to those very flexible, very ad hoc, very, moving data points. And we also start seeing more and more the capabilities of what we actually can do with that data to either assess risks or service our customers better.
Excellent. Monique, a final question for you here. Do you have preferred tools to support data governance?
Do we have what?
Preferred tools.
No, I have my personal ones that I just happen to like working with because I've been working with them for a while. But really, I think that for every organization, it is important, it was on one of the slides, to look over the criteria what makes a good tool for you. And it's very individual. There are tools that do fantastic in a Java kind of environment. There are tools that are great on SQL. There are tools that are very solid on unstructured data or unstructured.
So identify what's important for you and where your biggest data hurdles are, and then find a tool that matches to that, so that you can get optimal value out of it.
Excellent, Monique. That's all that's all the questions that you've received. So thank you so much for such a great presentation and for answering that with us.
No problem, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, that does take us to our final session for today's conference, and we are going to be hearing from Celine Hessat-Lecourtenic again. She's going to be covering the topic of overcoming data and analytics program barriers. And Celine, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, Celine, over to you. Can you hear me?
I'm trying to unmute. Okay, yeah,
perfect.
Great. Hi, everyone. All right. For everyone that was expecting slides, I'm not really a slide person. And anyway, I think that when it comes to talking about data culture, it's better to have it in an informal way and to look at actually what are the components to enable a data-driven organization, and the barriers which are much more related, I would say, to mindset than to the tech stack that you're actually selecting, right? So there was a study that was done by McKinsey, I think two years ago, regarding digital transformation, and it goes as well for data component of a good data transformation. At the end of the day, it is seen that 20% is about the tech stack. So what are the tools that you are selecting for your organization? What is your data lake? What is the visualization tool that you're selecting, depending on your environment and then your need, but 20% of it is about your tech stack. Whenever you implement a data product, you need to change the process. A data product, by definition, will be a predictive type of product, right? That is done for reactive actions to keep working with a predictive data product. I will take a very simple example in insurance. When you are a claim handler, so when you're an insurer and you're receiving a claim for your customer, usually the workflow is that you receive, so the customers go to the doctor or to the workshop to repair his car, and then send the invoices to the claim handler in the insurance at the insurance place, and then the claim handler will look at the document and then assess the claim and then decide if they're going to pay the full claim or only partially, if this is a genuine claim, if there's fraud, so this is all the process that is going back to the customer. But when you are doing, for example, fraud detection, or if you are trying to predict the claim before they even happen, or to be able to reduce the cost, right, in the case of an incident, or also to be able to predict the cost of, a long-term disease, and try to kind of take action to be able to reduce that that long-term cost of claim, then you need to be able to actually change the job of the people that are currently, doing the claim assessment. So they shouldn't be into a reactive mode of assessing claim. They should be into a predictive mode of how do I better manage my customer health, or how do I prevent them to get into an accident. So this is what is meant about 30% process reengineering. You need to re-engineering the way people work within the organization to be able to fit to the prediction of your data product or your data model. And 50%, the remaining 50% is about mindset. So mindset change of the organization. Mindset goes for me with a lot of aspects. First of all, the level of data literacy. So we've discussed about this, I believe, in past presentation. But what do we mean by the level of literacy? One in the organization understand the importance of data, from the top management to the C-suite executives to the managers on the ground, and as well as people, at ground level that are doing day-to-day operation. How do they are able to themselves use data interpret data to take the right decision? How are they able to, make use of data, or just being accountable for the data asset of the company? We're always talking about data quality, and data is an asset for the overall company, and everybody needs to be owner of the data asset, the same as everyone needs to be here for the customer, or needs to ensure the cybersecurity by not clicking on a phishing email, right? Everybody needs to be made accountable. So how do you actually educate all those? And Geraldine, in the previous panel, was mentioning about having mandatory training for all the employees, the same that you have today on phishing awareness, then being done on data quality awareness for all the employees. And I think that's a very good idea, because it's only when people would definitely understand the use of data into their daily job and what it can bring, that they will fully leverage the power of data for their organization. About a shortage of talent, and we've seen that especially in Singapore with the COVID situation, where people cannot come from abroad anymore. We've been discussing a lot about data scientist shortage, data engineer shortage. I still do believe that rather than trying to create this type of new job from the outside and only rely on fresh graduates, you need as well to have a strategy within your organization on how do I actually leverage on my existing people, leverage on my existing IT department, for example, to teach them about data and analytics, and how to deploy a pipeline of so they can actually be repurposed, because let's be realistic, with the move to cloud of a lot of organization, at the end of the day, a lot of jobs will not be relevant in the world of tomorrow. And as any technology change in the past, new jobs will be created, and people need to learn those new skill sets right now, I would say, to be able to be ready for tomorrow's work. But it's also the responsibility of the organization to look at the roadmap of their skill set. What are the tasks that will be automated tomorrow? What is the job of an insurance agent today, of a customer care person, of a claim handler for the insurance side, for example, of a relationship manager when it comes to banking? What are the type of tasks that those people are doing on a day-to-day basis? And which one of them will actually be automated and made not relevant anymore in a fully automated, intelligent world that AI would bring? And then what will be the value that those people would bring to the organization? Because their job is bringing value, and the intent of AI is to be able to optimize and to bring even more value out of those people. They will be able to focus solely on the customer. They will be able to focus solely on advertising what is the right product, and they won't have to do like manual reporting and then trying to do data wrangling by themselves in order to get a view of that they can share with their customers. So this is what AI and automation in general will bring to the organization. So when it comes to data skills, we don't only need people with coding. I can share my own personal story. I'm not from an analytic background or IT background at all. I think that what is important is to have more and more people that are probably less technical, but have a good understanding of where data can be useful for. So you have new type of jobs, we call them like analytic translator or AI translator, that are this kind of, new project manager for data and analytics project, right? So they are able to, be the middleman between the business and the requirement, and then the data scientist or the data analyst, and also talked with the data engineer on the full end-to-end pipeline industrialization. So there are those people that have this capability to at the same time understand the business and be able to help them to formulate what do they need into a proper analytical question, and then after go and coordinate with the analyst or the data scientist to get the insight and be able to challenge them with the next question that the business wants. So this is a type of business that do not, require coding background, but do require us to be able to understand can be right. The other suite of jobs that are actually developing more and more are all the jobs that are linked to data management and data quality, because as we highlighted in the previous presentation, having a proper data governance, having a proper understanding on where your data sits within the organization, who has access to them, what are they used for, and being able to have people that define your data. I mean, one of the common issue I have seen in several industries is, for example, the definition of the number of customers. What do we as a customer? Is it someone who purchased our service? And if you take, for example, the case of insurance, you know, a lot of the insurance are sold through insurance. For example, an insurer will sell an employee benefit insurance to, I don't know, whoever, Lazada, Redmart, and then they will cover all of their employees. So in that case, you know, who is the customer? Is it the person that is paying, or is it the person that is benefiting for the insurer? So you have a lot of those type of questions, and it goes as well in banking. You know, I'm opening bank account. You know, who are the customer? Is it me as a mother, or is it my 3 children whom I opened a bank account for, and that ultimately the bank would like to keep within their book for the following years, right? So those question of, you know, how many customers do we have, who are to whom are we addressing our offer to? How do we offline, because, you know, even some different departments have different views of what needs to be included in the top line of the company. So the data owner needs to really be made accountable to defining exactly what is the metric, how do you calculate it, how do you aggregate it, and this will become more and more important, as we just mentioned earlier. With the trend of sharing and be able to find partners with whom you can create new you know, value proposition thanks to data, you need to be able to standardize, you need to be able to define properly what your data means, and how do you aggregate them in order to deliver certain results. Then only will you be able to go beyond and find values with other organizations. Definition is always the first step, so everyone can have a good understanding of what we're talking about and refer to the same thing. So I would say it's Geraldine mentioned it earlier. There's not one profile of data analyst. It really depends on and of, you know, the application. For example, digital marketing will be a specific type of skill set where you have like people coming from targeted media advertising, you know, that know about all the tricks and the use of cookie and what are the KPI and metrics that you usually use when it comes to content and engagement. And then you would have, for example, a risk analyst, you know, where their job is actually to kind of predict or identify the level of risk that a financial institution or non-financial institution, by the way, is actually taking, you know. So all of those are, at the end of the day, analysts, right? It's just what is the industry or specialty that you have grown behind in terms of business understanding, while still being able to use data and predictive model, right? So I don't think there is so much of a shortage. There is a shortage of skill set for people that don't want to spend the time to understand what we're talking about, because everyone can learn data. I'm sure that everyone can learn data. And I've seen some other banks that have this ambition that in the future, everyone in the bank will be able to create a machine learning model. This is what we call data democratization, or citizen data scientist, if you want. You know, many tech stack and platform can nowadays enable anyone in your organization to actually easily find what is the machine learning that is a model that is actually fitting their need and their analytical question. So now the main question is, what is the roadmap of the organization to upskill everyone so everyone can tomorrow be able to kind of create a machine learning model if they wish to. So I wouldn't talk shortage that much. Maybe on right? Good data engineer are hard to find because it's really a mix of data analytics as well as computer science and engineering background. But again, there are many people today that used to work on the IT field in your IT department where, cloud migration will be actually challenging their current job. So why not repurposing them into what we call today's data engineer? Some other jobs that will be created in the future is, especially on the maintenance side of the model, is this role of ML ops, so machine learning ops. Those are people that are usually reporting to IT, but are in charge of deploying the model, ensuring the accuracy, monitoring it, and this is something that needs to happen in real time. So same as your current information system that are monitored on real time by an IT department, usually a support function. How do you actually develop those type of teams within an IT department that will be in charge of the models that would have been created by data scientists that is maybe within the business, What we see in terms of organization is that in less mature organization, you tend to kind of implement first a data team. So you have a data team, so it can be reporting to finance, usually for a bank or financial institution due to regulation. It can be reporting for rest of industries, those that are more retail based, for example. It can be also target, depending on what the industry is about, but it always starts with usually a central data team that is creating the first use cases, the first dashboard, the first model, and then quickly you're right to a kind of bottleneck where the business wants more, because data is an iterative process. Whenever you create, for example, an analytical dashboard, the aim is that the business will question, and what if, and so you need to kind of keep drilling down into the data in order to bring more insight and help the business to take the right decision. So having those type of centralized team usually works for a very short period of time. Then once the business is kind of hooked to data, then they will want to have insight quicker, results at their fingertip. So would start having their own analysts moving to them, so they know that they are fully dedicated and they understand as well their pain point in their business. So then you will move toward a more decentralized approach of data organization. What I have implemented in Bank of Singapore is that we have what we call a hub and spoke approach. So I run the hub. We've got the most experienced data scientists, but also we're looking at what is the platform, what is the best practice in the rest of the analytics in the organization, and then each department have their analytical spoke that are kind of a dotted line with us, but we're running them not as we're running a community, right? We're running a community of analysts within the bank. We're about 100 people, and we all share tools, best practice. Some people have more knowledge in risk, some other in products, some other in finance, and so we're kind of all helping each other, right? It's not a battle. It's we're really here with all the same vision to make data available to the rest of the organization, and so we're supporting each other. So I think this is kind of a right model where you have a central team that is looking at the overall data governance, data platform, tech stack, what are the tools that we're going to be selecting, and then at the end of the day, having the use cases that are more closer to the business. And then finally, a lot regarding expectation settings and as well as how do you prioritize your use cases. I think that at the end of the day, rather than talking about prioritization, I would talk about democratization again. It comes already, I already had the request from management, how do we prioritize each of the data use cases? And my answer is, how do you prioritize your business strategy? Because your data strategy should be totally in line with your business strategy. So your data use taking the right decision when it comes to your business strategy. So at the end of the day, I don't think there is such need for prioritization. They are mainly when you look at, okay, what are the investments in the platform And then usually you will have the regular question of, oh yeah, give me the ROI for that platform. And then you'll have to take one of the flagship use cases. So it can be usually fraud detection or cross-selling, because this is something people understand quite easily. So you take one of those big flagship use cases that will bring a lot of money or help to save a lot of money. And then this is what you use in order to be able to fund your own platform, or your own data analytic platform. And then it's the same as any other IT investment. At the end of the day, you always challenge putting in your data platform and how much has it brought back. And but do you actually, when you're in a bank or in insurance, do you actually wonder how much is your transaction system that is recording all your transactions bringing you at the end of the day? You need to do it. Everybody needs to have a proper enterprise architecture that is looking at real-time data of your processes, because if you're not doing it, then other competitor will do it, and they will be able to provide a better customer experience. So, which means that you will probably lose part of your market share in the future. So there's no much advice to be given on the lack of investment and how are you able to find the right use case to convince your management funding your data platform. It's a journey, and it really depends of the industry you're in. Does it make cash or not? It depends as well on the executive committee and your management when it comes to understanding data, as well as how much you can create in terms of and leadership for the rest of the organization. If the business is behind you and they trust you that data will actually, change the way that they're doing things and help them to get more top line or risk, help them to get better management of their compliance and risk, then people will follow you and you will get the approval that is necessary. So I believe this is part of my advice on that topic. I don't know if there are any questions that are from the audience, maybe, on this topic.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation and all of the cuff, no slides. It was very, very interesting. Thank you. I do have one question that's come through, and it's about the importance of data culture and its impact on the organization. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I mean, it is the importance of data culture. It is because, again, if the people don't understand, don't have the right level of understanding of what data and analytics can do, then, it would be very difficult to actually push through any project. And it would be difficult as well to be able to gather requirements for the organization. So what I've done in my past two position in AXA and Bank of Singapore is that I have created an upskilling roadmap along with HR. So we identified what I call like power user or champion in each of the departments. We needed to actually train people in Python and in the selected tool for visualization that was selected by the company. And then we created those kind of intensive super user program where actually our analyst, our own central data team is going outside in order to train the business to data, so they're able to self-serve at the end of the day. So we created those intensive training tracks that are made both of e-learning as well as small assessment, and then in-class training by the data analytics and data science team that I was managing. And I created also a track for the executive. So usually executive have less time, like the management committee, but at least they're spending about an hour a month to hear someone who knows, I invite industry expert, I invite vendors, and I try to get them out there in order to understand the right question. I create also forums where they're able to get the latest news on data, the latest McKinsey report or whatever. So it will start to, educate your higher management. Usually the population that we usually forget is the one in the middle between the operational and then the executive management committee, which are the C-suite and the managers, and those also need to be embarked. So For this, I usually kind of do data challenges. So not technical, you don't need coding, but you need to kind of understand the basic concept of analytics. So I'm using external platform vendors, many of them are doing that, but I'm trying to kind of gamify the learning of data and got them like organize a hackathon, and then the manager is actually part of one of the member team, and of course all of this is shown back to the executive committee. So the people who participate are actually rewarded by by the management. One of the other thing in moving the needle when it comes to data culture is the ability to be able to set up KPIs. I mean, people won't work at things that are not KPIs for them. I mean, if it's not impacting the bonus, you can't really ask them to really put time and effort. And it does require time to upskill yourself. It does require effort to get out there and understand something that you're not familiar with. So what we did as well, whether it's for the data management part of thing of the data analytics, is that we implemented KPIs. First year was proposed KPI, and then second year was a targeted compulsory KPI for the people that actually had to improve in the organization. And it goes from top management to the operational people. So that's also one of the good drivers when you want to change the culture.
Excellent. Celine, thank you so much for such an interesting presentation. Best of luck with all of your projects. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Sharon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Well, that does wrap up our session for today, and we'd like to thank you for being with us. We do have another day of sessions tomorrow, kicking off at 9:30 Singapore time. So please do tell your friends about it. To register, we have a really, really good lineup of speakers for you. So thank you so much for being with us today, and stay safe. Thank you.